The desert doesn't forgive mistakes. Neither does she. At 2:47 a.m., the highway stretched empty before Olivia Hargrove, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the vast Arizona darkness. The headlights of her Peterbilt semi-truck carved a tunnel through the night, illuminating nothing but the road ahead and occasional tumbleweeds dancing in the hot wind. Just how she liked it. Empty, predictable, safe. Liv adjusted her grip on the steering wheel, her calloused hands fitting into the worn grooves that had formed over tens of thousands of miles. The radio crackled softly, some country station fading in and out as she crossed the invisible boundaries of its broadcast range. She didn't bother searching for a clearer signal. The static felt appropriate somehow, a soundtrack to match the constant white noise in her head. The dashboard clock's green glow cast shadows across her broad face. At 47, Olivia Liv Hargrove carried her size with the quiet confidence of someone who had long ago stopped apologizing for the space she occupied in the world. Her substantial frame filled the driver's seat completely, her auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail that had more gray than she cared to admit. The lines around her eyes had deepened over the years, etched by sun and sorrow in equal measure. A passing road sign announced 50 miles to Phoenix, plenty of time before she needed to deliver her cargo of machine parts. Plenty of time alone with her thoughts, the one thing she tried hardest to avoid. She reached for her thermos, the coffee inside long since gone cold. It didn't matter. Caffeine was caffeine and sleep was the enemy tonight. Sleep brought dreams and dreams brought Kandahar back in vivid detail. The weight of the rifle against her shoulder. The children's voices carried on desert wind. The radio crackling with orders to hold fire. And then the truck swerved slightly and Liv corrected it with practiced precision, forcing her attention back to the present. The past was a dangerous place to visit, especially at 70 miles per hour in a fully loaded 18-wheeler. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder, a message from Dr. Kaplan at New Horizons Rehabilitation Center. Despite the hour, she pulled over onto the shoulder gravel, crunching beneath the massive tires. Messages about Ellie always took precedence over schedules. The text was brief. Ellie had a good day, participated in group, asked about you. Progress, but still a long road ahead. Liv stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the reply button. What could she say? That she was proud, that she was sorry, that if she'd been a better guardian, maybe her 15-year-old niece wouldn't have turned to pills to numb the pain of losing her mother. Instead, she typed, "Thanks for the update. I'll call tomorrow." Professional, detached, safe. As she pulled back onto the highway, the vast emptiness of the Arizona desert stretched around her. This was her world now. The open road, the solitude of the cab, the comforting hum of tires on asphalt. She'd been driving cross-country for 7 years, ever since she had hung up her uniform and tried to leave the war behind. Some nights like tonight, she almost believed she had succeeded. Almost. The Desert Mirage truck stop emerged from the pre-dawn haze like a neon oasis, a sprawling complex of gas pumps, a diner shower facilities, and a small motel. Liv guided her truck into a spot at the far end of the lot where she could keep an eye on all approaches. Old habits died hard. Inside the diner, the familiar sounds of clinking silverware and country music provided a comforting backdrop as Liv slid her considerable frame into a corner booth with a clear view of both entrances. The young waitress approached her name tag reading Sophia. Her accent carried the soft cadence of the Mexican border. "Coffee, Miss Liv?" she asked with a smile of recognition. "Please, Sophia, and the meatloaf special." Liv had been stopping at Desert Mirage long enough to be on a first-name basis with most of the staff. Sophia nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. Liv used the moment of solitude to scan the room, another habit from a life she tried to forget. The diner was half full, mostly fellow truckers hunched over plates after long hauls. A table of locals near the counter. Nobody who looked like trouble. As she waited, Liv opened her email on her phone. Among the usual route confirmations and invoices was a response from Veterans Reintegration Center regarding her application to become a firearms instructor. "We appreciate your interest and impressive qualifications. We'd like to schedule an interview at your convenience." She stared at the screen, conflicted. The position would mean stability, a chance to settle down, maybe even provide a proper home for Ellie once she completed rehab. It would also mean stepping back into a world adjacent to the one she'd fled, handling weapons training, others perhaps even confronting her own demons in the process. Before she could decide how to respond, the atmosphere in the diner shifted. The front door banged open, and 5 men in leather vests strutted in their boots heavy on the linoleum floor. Patches on their backs displayed a coiled red snake, the scarlet vipers. Conversations died. Silverware stilled. The bikers commandeered a large table, pushing aside the remnants of the previous diner's meal. The leader, a tall man with a shaved head and a vivid snake tattoo crawling up his neck, surveyed the room with predatory eyes. "Hey, Mexico," he snapped his fingers imperiously at Sophia. "Coffee, and make it quick." Sophia approached cautiously, coffee pot in hand. As she leaned to fill the mugs, the leader Liv had heard truckers call him. Razor grabbed her wrist, pulling her closer. "When you're done with that, sweetheart, how about showing me where the restrooms are?" His implication was clear in the way his eyes traveled over her body. The other bikers snickered. "Please let go," Sophia said quietly, trying to maintain her dignity despite the flush of humiliation on her cheeks. "The restrooms are clearly marked." "I'm not good with signs." Razor tightened his grip. "Need a personal guide." Sophia winced in pain. The other patrons looked away, suddenly fascinated by their meals. All except Liv. With deliberate movements, she slid from her booth and crossed the diner. Her substantial figure blocked the fluorescent overhead light, casting a shadow across Razor's table. "She asked you to let go," Liv said, her voice low and controlled. Razor looked up, surprised, quickly morphing into contempt. Well, look what rolled in. Mind your own business, fat ass. This is between me and the help." The diner went dead silent. Even the kitchen staff had paused to watch through the service window. What happened next occurred so quickly that most witnesses would later give conflicting accounts. Liv moved with a speed and precision that belied her size. Her right hand darted out, fingers finding exact pressure points on Razor's wrist. A simple twist applied with surgical precision, and suddenly the biker was gasping, his fingers involuntarily releasing Sophia as pain shot up his arm. Before he could recover, Liv had maneuvered his arm behind his back, applying just enough leverage to force him to his knees. She leaned down, her voice barely audible to anyone but Razor. "I don't need speed. I just need to know exactly where to apply pressure." She increased the hold infinitesimally, causing him to inhale sharply. "Now apologize to the lady." "Fuck you, in." Razor spat through. The bravado was undercut by the tremor in his voice. Liv adjusted her grip slightly. Nothing showy, just a small movement of her thumb that sent a white-hot jolt through Razor's nervous system. "Sorry," he gasped. "I'm sorry." Liv released him and stepped back, positioning herself between the bikers and Sophia. "The lady has other customers to attend to. I suggest you drink your coffee and leave a generous tip." For a tense moment, it seemed the other Scarlet Vipers might intervene. Hands moved toward concealed weapons. But something in Liv's stance, a stillness that professional fighters would recognize, gave them pause. Razor climbed back into his chair, nursing his wrist. "You've got no idea who you're messing with." "None at all." Liv's expression remained impassive. "Finish your coffee and get out. Or don't. Either way, you're leaving the girl alone." She returned to her booth without looking back, but remained hyper-aware of every movement behind her. The bikers huddled in heated whispers, occasionally casting venomous glances her way. After gulping down their coffee, they stormed out the bell above the door, jangling discordantly in their wake. Sophia approached Liv's table, coffee pot trembling slightly in her hand. "Thank you," she said softly. "But I'm afraid you've made enemies." Liv shrugged, a gesture that carried the weight of someone who'd faced far worse than angry bikers. "They were already enemies. At least now they know I'm not an easy target." Sophia's expression remained troubled. "They don't forget or forgive." "Neither do I," Liv replied, meeting the younger woman's eyes. Something in her gaze made Sophia take a small step back, a glimpse of something hard and dangerous beneath the truck driver's controlled exterior. After paying her bill, Liv made her way back to her truck, scanning the parking lot for any sign of the Scarlet Vipers. The lot seemed clear, but she conducted a thorough check of her vehicle anyway, underneath the chassis, around the wheels, inside the cab. Another habit from another life. Satisfied that nothing had been tampered with, she climbed into the sleeper cab and prepared for rest. She had an early delivery in Phoenix the next morning and needed to be on the road before dawn. As she settled onto the narrow bed, Liv's hand moved automatically to her throat, fingers finding the dog tags she still wore beneath her shirt after all these years. The metal was warm against her skin, a constant reminder of the woman she used to be. Lieutenant Olivia Hargrove, U.S. Navy SEAL, Specialized Sniper Unit, Afghanistan, a lifetime ago. Sleep came grudgingly that night, and when it did, it brought the dreams. Always the same. Desert wind, the weight of the rifle, a school building in the distance, children's voices carried on the hot air, the radio crackling with orders to hold fire. The explosion, the screams. Liv jerked awake at 3:18 a.m., her body slick with sweat despite the air conditioning. For a moment, she wasn't in an Arizona truck stop, but back on that rocky outcrop, watching helplessly as the mission went catastrophically wrong. She reached for her phone, checking the time. Too early to start driving, but sleep wouldn't return now. Instead, she pulled out her laptop and connected to the truck stop's Wi-Fi. Her inbox held the usual rote confirmations and invoices. She opened a document titled Kandahar Incident Personal Notes, password protected and encrypted. Within were her meticulous records of the failed operation, names, dates, communications transcripts, satellite imagery, evidence that pointed to a very different version of events than the official report. Evidence she had never shared with anyone. Liv stared at the screen, the blue light illuminating the deep lines around her eyes. 7 years and she still couldn't let it go. 7 years of collecting information, following news about former commanding officers, tracking military contracts awarded to private security firms run by retired officers. She closed the laptop without adding to the document. Some nights, the weight of what she knew, what she suspected, was too heavy to bear. Outside, the first hint of pre-dawn light rimmed the eastern horizon. Liv closed the laptop and began her morning routine stretches to loosen muscles tight from yesterday's confrontation, a quick wash in the cab's tiny sink, a protein bar, and black coffee from her thermos. By the time she settled behind the wheel, the lot was stirring with other early risers. Diesel engines rumbled to life. CB radios crackled with morning greetings and traffic updates, the rhythm of the road calling its disciples back to the asphalt communion. The delivery in Phoenix went smoothly, a warehouse on the outskirts that processed her paperwork efficiently and unloaded her cargo of machine parts without fuss. By noon, Liv was headed back east with an empty trailer, planning to pick up a new load in Tucson the following day. She stopped for fuel at a small, independent station outside Phoenix, topping off her tanks, while the summer heat shimmered across the blacktop. Inside, as she waited to pay her attention, was caught by a television mounted above the counter, a local news report about human trafficking. Authorities confirm an increase in activity along the southern border, the reporter was saying. Sources suggest an organized operation moving people through Arizona into Nevada and California. Sheriff's departments across 3 counties are coordinating efforts, but so far, no major arrests have been made. The image shifted to show a county sheriff, a weathered man with a carefully maintained mustache, addressing reporters. "We're doing everything we can with our limited resources. These organizations are sophisticated. They use scouts' encrypted communications and a network of locals who turn a blind eye for the right price." Something about the sheriff's delivery seemed rehearsed to Liv, his condemnation too practiced. But she pushed the thought aside as she handed her card to the cashier. Not her business, not her problem. Back on the road, Liv settled into the meditative state that long-haul driving induced, a hyper-aware alertness, combined with the peculiar introspection that came with hours of solitude. The landscape rolled by saguaro cacti, standing like sentinels against the harsh beauty of the desert. Her mind wandered to the confrontation at Desert Mirage. It had been years since she'd used her combat training, and the muscle memory had surprised her. The Navy had taught her to weaponize precision rather than brute force, to identify vulnerabilities and exploit them with minimal effort. It had made her an effective soldier despite her size, and later an exceptional sniper. Liv's hands tightened on the steering wheel. That life was behind her. She'd left it in the dust of Afghanistan, buried it beneath layers of civilian routine and the anonymity of America's highways. Out here, she was just another trucker. Unremarkable. Invisible. Exactly how she wanted it. The CB radio interrupted her thoughts. "Breaker 19 for Big Liv. You got your ears on, come back." Liv recognized the voice, Derek Walsh, another independent hauler she occasionally crossed paths with. She picked up the handset. "This is Liv. Go ahead, Derek." "Hey there, Liv. Word on the road is you had some trouble with the Scarlet Vipers last night." News traveled fast in trucking circles. "Nothing I couldn't handle," she replied, keeping her tone neutral. "Well, you might want to watch your back. Those boys have a reputation, and I just passed Desert Mirage, saw a couple of their bikes there looking mighty interested in the parking lot. Thought you should know. Liv frowned. Appreciate the heads up, Derek. No problem. Where you headed now? Back to Desert Mirage to pick up some personal items. Then overnight in Tucson for a morning pickup. Stay safe out there. Those vipers sting. Derek out. The warning left Liv uneasy. She'd expected some retaliation, but not so soon. Her original plan had been to swing by Desert Mirage to retrieve her shower kit, which she'd accidentally left in the facilities that morning. Now she debated whether it was worth the risk. Pride won out over caution. She wouldn't alter her route out of fear. If the Scarlet Vipers wanted to escalate, they'd find her ready. Desert Mirage appeared much as she'd left it, though considerably busier in the afternoon rush. Liv parked her truck and conducted another thorough inspection before heading toward the facilities building. No obvious tampering, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Inside, she retrieved her kit from the attendant who'd set it aside for her. As she turned to leave, Sophia appeared in the hallway, surprise registering on her face. "Miss Liv, I didn't expect to see you back so soon." "Just forgot something," Liv explained, holding up the shower kit. "Heading to Tucson now." Sophia glanced around nervously before stepping closer. "Those men came back," she said quietly. "They were asking questions about you when you might return, what your usual schedule is." "I figured they might." Liv kept her voice casual, though her mind was calculating threat assessments with military precision. "Don't worry about it." "There's more." Sophia hesitated. "I overheard them talking. They mentioned your truck, something about teaching you a lesson." "Thanks for the warning." Liv put a reassuring hand on the younger woman's shoulder. "But I've dealt with worse than them. You stay safe, okay? Don't take any unnecessary risks." Sophia nodded, though her expression remained troubled. "My shift ends at 7. I'll be careful." Outside, the desert sun was dipping toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Liv scanned the area carefully before approaching her truck. Nothing seemed out of place, but the prickling sensation at the base of her neck. An instinct honed through combat told her danger was present. She circled the Peterbilt, slowly checking for any signs of tampering. The tires appeared untouched. No wires where they shouldn't be, no leaking fluids. But when she reached the driver's side door, she noticed a small scratch in the paint beside the handle, fresh enough that metal still gleamed beneath. Someone had tried to force the lock. Liv changed her approach immediately. Instead of reaching for the handle, she knelt beside the door, examining the ground. A small black stain caught her attention. Fresh oil, but not from her truck. Motorcycle oil. She stood and backed away, surveying the lot with new intensity. The Scarlet Vipers weren't visible, but that didn't mean they weren't watching, waiting. A tactical decision was required: continue to Tucson as planned, potentially dealing with whatever sabotage they'd managed to implement while driving, or confront the threat now on relatively familiar ground. Liv chose the latter. She moved toward the diner, intending to call for assistance from inside. When movement at the edge of the lot caught her eye, a familiar figure. Sophia was walking rapidly toward the employee parking area, looking over her shoulder repeatedly. Following her gaze, Liv spotted 2 Scarlet Vipers emerging from behind a maintenance shed, their postures predatory as they tracked the young waitress. Without hesitation, Liv changed direction, intercepting Sophia before she reached her car. "Don't react," she said quietly, falling into step beside the startled woman. "You're being followed. Stay with me." Sophia's eyes widened, but she had the presence of mind to keep walking. "They were waiting by my car earlier," she whispered. "I went back inside to call for a ride, but no one can come." "I'll drive you home," Liv offered, guiding them both toward the main building. "Just need to make a quick call first." Inside, Liv used the payphone near the restrooms, less traceable than her cell. She called the local sheriff's department, reporting suspicious activity around her truck and requesting assistance. The dispatcher assured her a deputy would arrive within 20 minutes. Liv hung up, not entirely satisfied, but unwilling to wait any longer with Sophia clearly at risk. "Come on," she said, leading the way back outside. "We'll take the long way around to my truck. Stay close." They circled the main building, using the evening shadows for cover. When they reached the parking lot, Liv was relieved to see her truck appeared undisturbed. No sign of the bikers. "It looks clear," she told Sophia, "but stay behind me." They were halfway across the lot when the ambush came not from the shadows they had been watching, but from beneath the truck itself. A figure rolled out from under the trailer, and lunged toward them, the gleam of a knife visible in the fading light. Liv reacted instantaneously, shoving Sophia clear while pivoting to face the attacker. The biker, one of Razor's lieutenants she recognized, slashed wildly, aiming for her midsection. With precision born from years of combat training, Liv sidestepped the attack. The knife cut through empty air as she countered her substantial forearm, connecting with the biker's wrist. The impact wasn't showy or cinematic, just a precise application of leverage against a joint unprepared for resistance. The knife clattered to the asphalt. Before her attacker could recover, Liv drove a short, powerful jab into his solar plexus. The biker doubled over, gasping for air. She followed with a swift knee to the face as he bent forward, sending him sprawling. "Run to the diner," she shouted to Sophia. "Get inside." But it was too late. 3 more Scarlet Vipers emerged from between parked trucks, cutting off their escape route. One held a length of chain, swinging it in lazy circles. Another carried a crowbar. The third, Razor himself, had a pistol pointed casually in their direction. "Not so tough now, eh, Whale?" Razor sneered, using his free hand to wipe blood from his lieutenant's face. "Thought we'd just let you walk away after that stunt yesterday." Liv positioned herself between the bikers and Sophia, mind racing through tactical options. She was outnumbered and outgunned. The nearest cover was 20 feet away. Too far. "This is between us," she said evenly. "Let the girl go." Razor pretended to consider this. "No, see, she's a witness, and besides," his gaze lingered on Sophia with predatory appreciation, "my boys deserve some entertainment after the trouble you've caused." The standoff was interrupted by the distant wail of sirens. Someone in the diner must have spotted the confrontation and called 911. Razor's expression darkened. "This isn't over," he promised, gesturing for his men to retreat. "Not by a long shot. We know who you are now, Olivia Hargrove. We know your routes, your stops. This is just the beginning." The use of her full name sent an icy shock through Liv's system. They'd researched her. This wasn't random harassment. It was targeted. As the bikers melted into the gathering darkness, the first police cruiser pulled into the lot, lights flashing. The sheriff's deputy who emerged looked barely old enough to shave his uniform crisp, and his hand hovering nervously near his holster. "What's going on here?" he demanded, surveying the scene with obvious inexperience. Liv explained the situation as concisely as possible: the harassment, the attempted assault, the threats. The deputy took notes with bureaucratic thoroughness, but his eyes kept darting toward the darkened edges of the lot, betraying his unease. "I'll file a report," he promised, "but unless we catch them in the act, there's not much we can do. These guys are slippery and they've got connections." "What kind of connections?" Liv pressed. The deputy shifted uncomfortably. "Just connections. Look, my advice, move on. Find another route for a while. These guys eventually lose interest if you don't provide entertainment." His casual dismissal of the threat rankled, but Liv kept her expression neutral. "No point antagonizing local law enforcement. I still need to get Sophia home safely." "I can do that," the deputy offered a little too quickly. "Part of the service." Sophia glanced between them, clearly uncertain. "Perhaps it would be better if Miss Liv—" "It's fine," Livwell interrupted, reading the situation. "Deputy?" "Collins," he supplied. "Deputy Collins will get you home safely," Liv assured Sophia, though her instincts screamed otherwise. "I need to check my truck anyway, make sure they didn't damage anything." Sophia seemed about to protest, but ultimately nodded, allowing the deputy to escort her to his cruiser. As they pulled away, she looked back at Liv through the rear window, her expression a mixture of gratitude and concern. Once alone, Liv conducted a thorough inspection of her vehicle. The attempted break-in had been amateur work scratches around the lock, but no actual entry. She found a crude tracking device magnetically attached to the undercarriage Child's Play to detect for someone with her training, and removed it, crushing it beneath her boot. More concerning was what she found inside the cab. Her personal logbook had been disturbed pages dog-eared, where information about her regular routes was recorded. The bikers had been inside her truck, studying her patterns. This went beyond simple intimidation. They were hunting her. As Liv climbed into the driver's seat, a new notification appeared on her phone, an email from the rehab center in Tucson. "Change in scheduled visit. Ellie asking specifically to see you Saturday." Possible. The timing couldn't be worse, but Liv couldn't bear to disappoint her niece. She typed a quick confirmation, then started the engine. She'd deal with the Scarlet Vipers situation before Saturday. Somehow, the highway stretched empty before her as Liv headed toward Tucson, the night wrapping around her truck like a protective cloak. She replayed the confrontation in her mind, analyzing her tactical errors, planning countermeasures for future encounters. The CB radio crackled to life. Breaker 19 for Big Liv. You copy, Derek again. Liv considered ignoring the call but decided against it. Derek might have useful information. This is Liv. Go ahead. Heard there was some excitement at Desert Mirage. You okay? News traveled fast. Too fast, maybe. I'm fine. Nothing I couldn't handle. Glad to hear it. Where you headed now? Liv hesitated. Normally, she'd share her destination freely with a fellow trucker, but tonight caution seemed warranted. Just rolling east. You. If Derek noticed her evasion, he didn't comment. Heading to that new warehouse complex outside Tucson. Got a pickup at 600. Say if you're in the area, maybe we could grab breakfast. I've got some information about our Scarlet friends you might find interesting. The offer was tempting. Derek had been on the roads longer than she had, with connections throughout the Southwest trucking community. If anyone knew the Scarlet Vipers' patterns, it would be him. Maybe, she replied noncommittally. I'll call if I'm free. Roger that. Watch your six, Liv. Derek out. The CB fell silent, leaving Liv alone with her thoughts again. She adjusted her route slightly, taking a less direct path to Tucson as a precaution against being followed. The delay would cost her an hour, but peace of mind was worth it. As the miles rolled beneath her wheels, Liv's mind drifted to Afghanistan, to the woman she'd been before. The memories came unbidden vivid despite the years between. The rocks dug into Olivia's elbows as she lay prone on the ridgeline, her ghillie suit blending with the harsh Afghan terrain. Through the scope of her M40A5 rifle, she tracked the movement of a Taliban fighter moving between buildings in the village below. 900 yards, a challenging shot, but well within her capabilities. The wind whipped dust across the valley, a complication that would affect her bullet's trajectory. Olivia made mental calculations, adjusting for windage distance and even the Earth's curvature for a shot this long. Target confirmed, her spotter whispered beside her. Green light to engage. Olivia controlled her breathing, finding the space between heartbeats. Her finger caressed the trigger, applying steady pressure until the radio crackled. Sierra 1, hold fire. Repeat, hold fire. Awaiting confirmation of target identity. Olivia's finger froze. Sierra 1 copies holding fire. Below, the target disappeared into a school building. Intelligence had indicated it was being used as a Taliban command post, but there were civilian considerations. Children movement at the east entrance, her spotter warned. Multiple tangos. Through her scope, Olivia counted 6 armed men entering the school. Her heart rate increased slightly. This wasn't right. Something was happening. Sierra 1 to command. Request permission to engage. Multiple armed targets entering objective building. Negative Sierra 1, hold position. We need visual confirmation of target identity. Frustration built as Olivia watched more fighters converge on the school. Something was very wrong. She could feel it. The sudden urgency in their movements, the purposeful way they secured the perimeter. Sierra 1 to command. We are observing pre-attack formations. Request immediate permission to engage. Hold fire, Sierra 1. That's an order. Beside her, her spotter swore quietly. They're setting up something. An explosive, maybe. Olivia's instincts screamed that he was right, but orders were orders. She kept her crosshairs trained on the main entrance finger, hovering near the trigger, ready to act the instant permission came. It never did. The explosion ripped through the school building with catastrophic force, the sound reaching their position a second after the flash. Debris shot skyward. The structure collapsed in on itself, dust and smoke billowing into the clear Afghan sky. Sierra 1 to command. School is down. Multiple casualties expected. Olivia fought to keep her voice professional, despite the horror unfolding before her. Copy, Sierra 1. Remain in position. QRF is inbound. As the dust settled, the full extent of the tragedy became visible through her scope. Bodies in the rubble, small bodies. Children who had been hidden inside hostages, perhaps, or human shields. And among them, the broken forms of 3 American soldiers who had been captured earlier that week. The mission was a catastrophic failure, and Olivia, who could have prevented it with a single shot, had followed orders. had held fire, had failed. Liv jerked back to the present as a semi blared its horn, passing her on the left. She drifted partially into the next lane during her flashback. Shaken, she pulled into a rest area, needing a moment to recenter herself. The PTSD episodes had decreased in frequency over the years, but stress tended to trigger them, and the confrontation with the Scarlet Vipers had definitely qualified as stress. She stepped down from the cab, stretching her legs in the cool night air. The rest area was deserted except for a couple of other trucks whose drivers were likely sleeping. Liv walked a perimeter around her vehicle, using the physical activity to ground herself in the present. The distant rumble of motorcycles froze her mid-stride. 3 bikes appeared on the access road, headlights cutting through the darkness. Even without seeing the riders clearly, Liv knew. Scarlet Vipers. She sprinted back to her truck, calculating options. The bikes were blocking the exit. No authorities nearby. No witnesses. This would be a fair fight at best, and they had numbers on their side. Liv climbed into the cab and locked the doors, reaching for her phone. The screen showed no signal unusual for this area. She tried the CB radio. Nothing but static. Someone was using a signal jammer. The bikers stopped 30 yards away, engines idling as they assessed her truck. They were in no hurry. They had her cornered. Liv's hand moved toward the compartment where she kept her handgun, but she hesitated. Escalating to deadly force would have consequences she wasn't prepared for. There had to be another way. The decision was made for her when one of the bikers dismounted, approaching her truck with deliberate menace. In the glow of the rest area lights, she recognized Razor, a crowbar now swinging from his hand. Liv started the engine. There was only one way out through them. The massive diesel roared to life, headlights blazing as she shifted into gear. Razor hesitated, clearly not expecting this response. Liv pressed the accelerator, sending the truck lurching forward with surprising speed for its size. The bikers scrambled, abandoning the planned ambush as 18 wheels of determined steel bore down on them. Razor dove aside at the last moment, the crowbar clattering to the pavement as Liv's truck thundered past, missing him by inches. She didn't slow down, taking the access road at a dangerous speed, the trailer swaying behind her. In her mirrors, she could see the bikers remounting, preparing to pursue. But she had the advantage, now momentum and a head start. The truck fishtailed onto the highway, tires smoking as Liv pushed the Peterbilt to its limits. The speedometer climbed past speeds no responsible trucker would attempt with a trailer, but desperation overrode caution. For 10 white-knuckle miles, she maintained this pace, watching for the pursuing headlights. When none appeared, she finally allowed herself to ease off the accelerator, bringing the rig back to a safer speed. The encounter confirmed what she'd already suspected: the Scarlet Vipers weren't just random harassers. They were organized, determined, and specifically targeting her. The question was why? What had she stumbled into? Dawn was breaking as Liv reached the outskirts of Tucson, the city sprawling beneath a sky painted in shades of orange and purple. She bypassed her usual truck stop, opting instead for an anonymous gas station, where she refueled quickly before finding a quiet industrial lot to park and rest. Sleep wouldn't come, though. Her mind was too active, processing yesterday's events, seeking patterns, forming hypotheses. The Scarlet Viper's interest in her seemed disproportionate to a single confrontation at a diner. Either they were exceptionally vindictive, or something else was driving their pursuit. At 7:00 a.m., she called Derek, arranging to meet at a small diner near the warehouse district. She arrived early, securing a booth with clear sight lines to all exits and keeping her truck visible through the window. Derek appeared 15 minutes later, his lanky frame stooped from years hunched over steering wheels. At 55, his face was deeply lined, his beard shot through with gray, but his eyes remained sharp beneath bushy brows. "You look like hell, Liv," he observed, sliding into the booth across from her. "Rough night." "You could say that." She gave him a condensed version of the events since they'd last spoken, omitting only her military background and the flashback episode. Derek whistled softly. "That's escalation, no doubt about it, but not surprising given what those boys are involved in." "Which is what, exactly?" Derek glanced around before leaning forward. "Word is the Scarlet Vipers are not just your garden variety motorcycle gang anymore. They've graduated to bigger things, specifically human trafficking." The news report Liv had seen yesterday suddenly clicked into context. "Across the southern border," Derek continued, They're muscle for a bigger operation providing security, intimidating locals, keeping routes clear. Very profitable work. And you think they're after me because you're a disruption, an unknown variable. Truckers see a lot on the highways, Liv. Things most folks miss. The wrong pair of eyes in the wrong place can cost an operation like theirs millions. It made a twisted kind of sense. The highways of the Southwest were the arteries of commerce, legal and otherwise. Independent truckers like Liv traversed remote areas at all hours, potentially witnessing activities meant to remain hidden. So they want me out of the region or just scared into silence? Derek shrugged. Hard to say. Could be they're just establishing dominance, making an example of you to keep other truckers in line. He sipped his coffee. Either way, might be time to consider a new route for a while. Head north maybe. Washington, Oregon. Wait for things to cool down. The suggestion was practical, logical even, but something in Derek's casual delivery felt off to Liv's trained instincts. Maybe, she replied noncommittally. I've got some commitments here first, though. Family stuff. Derek nodded understandingly. Family's important. Just be careful, Liv. These aren't people you want to underestimate. They finished their meal with lighter conversation, industry gossip, road conditions, the ever-increasing price of diesel. But Liv remained guarded, analyzing Derek's every comment for hidden meanings or inconsistencies. When they parted in the parking lot, Derek offered a final piece of advice. If you are staying in the area, it might be worth talking to Sheriff Parker in Apache County. Word is he's building a case against the Scarlet Vipers. Might appreciate any information you could provide. I'll think about it, Liv promised, though she had no intention of involving law enforcement further, given her earlier experience with Deputy Collins. As Derek's truck disappeared down the road, Liv sat in her cab, considering options. Running wasn't in her nature, never had been, even before the Navy had trained the last vestiges of retreat from her psyche. But neither was reckless confrontation. She needed more information. And perhaps more importantly, she needed to secure her niece's safety before proceeding. If the Scarlet Vipers had researched her thoroughly enough to learn her full name and routes, they might know about Ellie too. Decision made, Liv started her engine. She had a pickup scheduled for the afternoon, industrial equipment bound for Phoenix. After that, she'd visit Ellie at the rehab center, assess the security situation, and then make her next move. Whatever the Scarlet Vipers were involved in, she wouldn't be intimidated off the road. Not by them, not by anyone. The warehouse where Liv was scheduled to pick up her load was located in an industrial zone on Tucson's south side, a sprawling complex of metal buildings surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Security seemed tight, with cameras covering the entrance and a guard booth controlling access. Liv provided her credentials to the stone-faced guard, who verified them against a clipboard before raising the barrier. She followed the indicated route to loading dock 7, where her shipment waited. As workers loaded pallets of machinery onto her trailer, Liv observed the facility with professional interest. The security measures seemed excessive for industrial equipment. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Cameras covered every angle. Workers moved with the careful precision of people who knew they were being watched. Quite an operation you've got here, she commented to the dock supervisor who was signing off on her manifest. The man Rodriguez, according to his name tag, barely glanced up. Standard procedure for industrial pumps and generators. Rodriguez's eyes flicked to meet hers, a flash of warning in them. We handle all kinds of shipments, some more valuable than others. He handed back the clipboard with a finality that discouraged further questions. Liv took the hint, returning to her truck to prepare for departure. As she waited for the final loading checks, movement near the facility's rear gate caught her attention, a nondescript box truck backing up to a loading dock, partially hidden from the main yard. 2 armed guards stood watch as workers quickly transferred what appeared to be large metal containers from the warehouse to the truck. Something about the operation raised Liv's hackles, the efficiency, the security, the obvious effort to minimize visibility. She casually raised her phone as if checking messages, angling it to capture several photos of the activity. The images weren't clear, too far away for detail, but showed enough to document the unusual transfer. All set, driver, Rodriguez's voice startled her. He'd approached the cab silently, eyes narrowing at her phone. Something interesting. Just checking road conditions. Liv lied smoothly, tucking the phone away. Thanks for the efficient loading. Rodriguez watched her start the engine, his expression unreadable. As Liv pulled away from the dock, she noticed him speaking urgently into a radio, gesturing in her direction. The guard at the exit booth studied her paperwork with exaggerated thoroughness before finally allowing her to depart. In her mirrors, Liv observed the box truck she'd photographed pulling out from the rear gate, turning in the opposite direction. Her instincts were screaming that something that was very wrong at that warehouse. The security, the secrecy, the containers being loaded with such care. Containers large enough to hold people. Derek's words echoed in her mind. The Scarlet Vipers weren't just your garden variety motorcycle gang anymore. They've graduated to bigger things, specifically human trafficking. Liv made a split-second decision, taking a right turn that would keep her parallel to the route the box truck had taken. Her scheduled delivery in Phoenix wasn't time-sensitive. A small delay wouldn't raise any alarms. For 20 minutes, she maintained a discreet distance using the truck's height advantage to track the box truck as it wound through Tucson's industrial districts toward the interstate. Nothing in its appearance or driving pattern would attract attention from casual observers or law enforcement. At the interstate on-ramp, the box truck paused, waiting for something. Liv pulled into a gas station with a good view, pretending to check her tires while keeping the vehicle in sight. A motorcycle appeared, then another. Scarlet Vipers taking up escort positions around the truck before all three vehicles merged onto the highway heading west. Confirmation. The gang was providing security for whatever or whoever was in that truck. Liv returned to her cab, debating her next move. The smart play would be to contact authorities, share her suspicions and photos, then continue with her scheduled delivery, let law enforcement handle it. But her experience with Deputy Collins had left her skeptical about local authorities. And a deeper, more personal instinct was asserting itself, the Navy SEAL who had once sworn to protect the innocent, who had failed those children in Kandahar, who had spent years running from that failure. Before she could decide, her phone rang, an unknown number with a local area code. "Hello, is this Olivia Hargrove?" A woman's voice, professional but tense. "Speaking. Who's this?" "This is Sandra Reyes from New Horizons Rehabilitation Center. I'm calling about your niece Ellie." Liv's heart rate spiked. "Is she okay?" "She's fine, Ms. Hargrove, but there's been an incident I thought you should know about. A man came by earlier claiming to be Ellie's uncle, attempting to sign her out for a day visit. When our staff questioned his authorization, he became agitated and left." Description. Liv's voice had gone cold, tactical. Mid-30s, tall, heavily tattooed. Most distinctively, a red snake tattoo on his neck. Ice flooded Liv's veins. They'd found Ellie, were trying to use her as leverage. "I'm on my way," she said, already starting the engine. "Please ensure no one, absolutely no one, has access to Ellie until I arrive. And contact the police for additional security if possible." "Already done, Ms. Hargrove. We take these security breaches very seriously." Liv ended the call, mind shifting fully into combat mode for the first time in years. The Scarlet Vipers had crossed a line. They'd threatened her family. The box truck and its human cargo would have to wait. Ellie's safety came first. As she pulled onto the road toward the rehabilitation center, Liv accessed a hidden compartment beneath her sleeper cab, a modification she'd installed years ago, untraceable and unknown even to the mechanics who serviced her truck. Inside was a hard case containing items from her previous life, a disassembled M40A5 sniper rifle, ammunition field glasses, a ghillie suit, equipment she'd never intended to use again but couldn't bring herself to discard. The muscles in Liv's jaw tightened as she secured the compartment. She'd spent years running from who she had been, what she was capable of, years burying the sniper beneath layers of civilian identity. Those years were over. Lieutenant Olivia Hargrove was back, and the Scarlet Vipers had no idea what was coming for them. The New Horizons Rehabilitation Center occupied a former resort property on Tucson's north side. Its adobe buildings nestled among saguaro cacti and desert landscaping. Under normal circumstances, Liv found the place peaceful, even healing. Today, approaching with combat-heightened senses, she cataloged vulnerabilities. Too many access points, minimal security cameras, a perimeter fence easily scaled. At the front desk, a nervous administrator directed her to the director's office, where she found Ellie already waiting alongside the center's head of security. Aunt Liv, the 15-year-old, launched herself into Liv's arms with the unself-conscious affection of someone who saw beyond physical appearance to the person beneath. Skinny and tall for her age, Ellie had her mother's delicate features, but her aunt's determined chin. They said some creep was pretending to be family. "Was it one of those bikers you texted me about?" Liv shot a questioning look at the security director who raised his hands defensively. She hacked into her mother's email account again. We've had several discussions about digital boundaries. Despite the situation, Liv felt a flicker of pride. Ellie had always been technically brilliant, finding workarounds to systems designed to contain her, much like her aunt in that regard, though. Liv's rebellions had been more physical than digital. Yes, it was one of them, Liv confirmed, keeping her arm around her niece's shoulders. Which is why we need to move you somewhere safe until this is resolved. The director, a former military man himself, judging by his bearing, nodded in agreement. We've already contacted Ms. Reynolds, your sister, and received authorization to release Ellie into your custody temporarily. The police have been notified about the security breach, but given the circumstances, we believe Ellie would be safer away from here. It was the outcome Liv had hoped for but hadn't expected to achieve so easily. Thank you. We'll leave immediately. Where are we going? Ellie asked as they walked briskly to the parking lot, the security director escorting them. Somewhere unexpected, Liv replied, scanning the area for threats. Pack light, essentials only. While Ellie gathered her belongings, Liv had a private word with the center's security team, providing descriptions of the Scarlet Vipers and emphasizing the potential danger. She also left contact information for Sheriff Parker in Apache County, the officer Derek had mentioned as building a case against the gang. If Derek's information was accurate, Parker might be a valuable ally. Within 30 minutes they were on the road. Ellie settled into the passenger seat of the Peterbilt with wide-eyed excitement at the unexpected adventure. Are we going to your safe house? She asked, bouncing slightly with poorly contained energy. Do you have weapons there? Will you teach me to shoot? Whoa, slow down, Liv cautioned, though she couldn't help smiling at her niece's enthusiasm. First, it's not a safe house. It's just a small property I own off the grid. Second, yes, there are weapons, but no, you won't be handling them. Ellie's face fell momentarily before curiosity reasserted itself. Are these guys after you because of something from when you were a SEAL? Something classified. The question landed like a physical blow. Liv had never discussed her military service with Ellie, had mentioned it only in the vaguest terms to her sister. Who told you I was a SEAL? Mom did when she was really high once, Ellie admitted, fiddling with her seatbelt. She said you were some kind of super soldier who got messed up in the war. That's why you don't talk about it. Liv sighed. Her sister's addiction had loosened her tongue in ways that couldn't be undone. It's complicated, Ellie, and no, these guys aren't after me because of anything military. They're criminals who think I saw something I shouldn't have. Did you see something, I mean? Maybe, Liv conceded, turning onto a less traveled highway heading east. But the important thing right now is keeping you safe. Ellie fell silent for a while, watching the desert landscape roll past the windows. When she spoke again, her voice had lost its excitable edge, replaced by a maturity that sometimes startled Liv. You know, you don't have to protect me from everything, right? I'm not a little kid. I've seen stuff, bad stuff with Mom, I mean. The simple statement carried the weight of years spent watching a parent deteriorate through addiction. Experiences no child should have to navigate. I know, Ellie, Liv said softly, but this is different. These men are dangerous in ways that aren't abstract. They hurt people for a living. And you're going to stop them, like, single-handedly. Liv hesitated, weighing how much to reveal. I'm going to do what's necessary to keep us both safe. After that, we'll see. Ellie studied her aunt's profile with disconcerting perception. You're different when you're like this, she observed. Less? I don't know. Hidden, maybe. The observation struck uncomfortably close to the truth. Since Afghanistan, Liv had been hiding from her past, from her capabilities, from the woman she had been. The truck driver persona, while not entirely false, was a deliberately constructed shield between her and the world. Sometimes circumstances require different versions of ourselves, she replied carefully. I like this version, Ellie decided. She seems more real. The simple acceptance in her niece's voice touched something deep in Liv's chest, a longing for connection she'd denied herself for years. Perhaps Ellie was right. Perhaps it was time to stop hiding. But first they needed to reach safety. The property Liv had referred to was actually a small cabin in the Superstition Mountains, accessible only by a dirt track that would challenge anything less rugged than her modified pickup truck, which she kept stored in a private garage on the outskirts of Tucson for just such contingencies. After retrieving the truck and transferring essential supplies from the Peterbilt, they began the journey into the mountains. Liv had purchased the remote cabin under an LLC 3 years earlier, a bolt hole established during one of her more paranoid phases when the PTSD had been particularly acute. Now, as they bumped along the barely there road with the sun setting behind them, she was grateful for that paranoia. "This is so cool," Ellie declared, bracing herself against the dashboard as the truck navigated a particularly steep section. "It's like we're in a movie or something." "Let's hope not," Liv replied dryly. "Movies tend to involve a lot more shooting than I'm comfortable with." The cabin appeared as they crested a final ridge, a simple structure of weathered wood and stone, nearly invisible against the rocky backdrop. Solar panels on the roof provided minimal electricity. A small stream nearby offered water. The nearest neighbor was 5 miles away, and cell service was non-existent. Perfect isolation. Liv did a quick perimeter check before allowing Ellie inside, confirming that the basic security measures she'd installed remained undisturbed. Motion sensors, trail cameras, strategic lines of sight cleared through the surrounding vegetation. "Home sweet home," she announced, unlocking the reinforced door, "at least for a few days." The interior was Spartan but functional, a main room with basic furniture, a small kitchen area, a bathroom with a composting toilet, and 2 small bedrooms. Liv had stocked the pantry with non-perishable supplies during her last visit 6 months earlier. While Ellie explored the cabin with adolescent curiosity, Liv unpacked the equipment she'd retrieved from her truck's hidden compartment. The rifle case went under her bed, ammunition in a locked cabinet, field glasses, and tactical gear in the small closet. By the time she'd finished, Ellie had claimed the second bedroom and was arranging her meager possessions with territorial satisfaction. "I've got homework," she announced pragmatically. "The center makes us keep up with school stuff even in rehab." "Good," Liv nodded. "Normalcy is important, especially now." As Ellie settled at the small table with her books, Liv busied herself preparing a simple meal from the cabin supplies. The domestic routine felt surreal after the tension of the day, but she welcomed the temporary reprieve. Later, as they ate beans and rice by the light of a solar-powered lamp, Liv outlined the situation in terms Ellie could understand without being unnecessarily frightened. "We'll stay here for a few days while I figure out our next move. The satellite phone works if we need emergency services, but otherwise we're off the grid. No one knows about this place except us." "What about Mom?" Ellie asked, pushing the remaining food around her plate. "She's supposed to have a supervised visit this weekend." "I spoke to the center director. They've informed her of the situation. Her visit will be rescheduled once things are resolved." Ellie nodded, her expression guarded. She'd learned to expect disappointment where her mother was concerned. "Are you going to call the police about the bikers?" Liv considered the question. "I'm going to contact someone tomorrow who might be able to help, a sheriff in a neighboring county who's supposedly building a case against these guys. And if he can't help," the question hung in the air, laden with implications. Liv met her niece's eyes directly. "Then I'll handle it myself." Ellie held her gaze for a long moment before nodding, apparently satisfied. "Good, because they came after me to get to you. That makes it personal." The mature assessment startled a laugh from Liv. "You sound like a character from one of those crime shows." "I watch a lot of TV at the center," Ellie admitted with a grin. "Not much else to do between therapy sessions." After dinner, Liv secured the cabin for the night, checking locks, setting the motion sensors, establishing a mental catalog of defensive positions should the impossible happen and they be discovered. Old habits, Navy habits, sniper habits. She sat on the small porch for a while, watching as stars emerged in the clear desert sky. The rhythm of tactical planning settled her mind, pushing aside the emotional turmoil of the day. She had always functioned best with a clear mission, defined parameters, identifiable threats. Protect Ellie, neutralize the Scarlet Viper's threat, investigate the human trafficking operation. 3 objectives prioritized in that order. The satellite phone in her pocket felt heavy with potential. Tomorrow she would contact Sheriff Parker, gauge his reliability, determine whether official channels offered a viable solution. But tonight, watching over her sleeping niece, Olivia Hargrove, allowed herself to acknowledge a truth she'd been running from for years. Some battles couldn't be avoided, only postponed, and sometimes the very skills and instincts she tried to bury were exactly what was needed to protect what mattered most. The woman who had once been the Navy's most lethal female sniper hadn't disappeared. She'd just been waiting, biding her time until circumstances required her return. Now those circumstances had arrived, and heaven help anyone who stood between Liv Hargrove and the safety of her family. The morning dawned clear and cool in the mountain sunlight filtering through pine branches to dapple the cabin's wooden porch. Liv had been awake for hours, alternating between perimeter checks and quiet meditation techniques that kept her mind sharp. Ellie emerged from her room just after 7, hair tousled from sleep, but eyes alert. "Any bad guys try to attack in the night?" "Not a one," Liv assured her, pouring a cup of instant coffee. "Apparently, evil sleeps in." After a breakfast of oatmeal and dried fruit, Liv set up the satellite phone on the porch where reception was strongest. She had decided to contact Sheriff Parker directly, bypassing the typical channels that might alert corrupt elements within local law enforcement. "I need to make a call," she told Ellie. "Private. Why don't you explore a bit? Just stay within sight of the cabin." Ellie rolled her eyes at the protective instruction, but complied, scrambling down to investigate the small stream that provided the cabin's water. Liv dialed the Apache County Sheriff's Department, requesting Sheriff Parker by name. After several transfers and a suspicious deputy's questioning, a gruff voice finally came on the line. "Parker here. Who am I speaking with?" "Sheriff, my name is Olivia Hargrove. I'm a truck driver operating throughout Arizona. I've recently had some concerning encounters with a motorcycle gang called the Scarlet Vipers, and I've been informed you might be building a case against them." There was a pause. "And where did you get that information, Ms. Hargrove?" "A fellow trucker, Derek Walsh. He suggested I reach out to you." Another longer pause. When Parker spoke again, his voice had cooled noticeably. "I see. And what exactly were these concerning encounters you mentioned?" Liv described the initial confrontation at Desert Mirage, the subsequent ambush attempts, and the gang's visit to the rehabilitation center, omitting only her military background and current location. "That's quite a story," Parker said when she finished. "But I'm afraid I can't help you." "Can't or won't," Liv pressed. "Let me be clear, Ms. Hargrove. While I appreciate your concerns, I strongly suggest you leave this matter to law enforcement. These organizations are dangerous, sophisticated, and not to be approached by civilians. File a report with your local authorities and stay away from areas where these individuals are known to operate." The dismissal was polite but firm. Parker was shutting her down, steering her toward official channels that had already proven ineffective. "Sheriff, with all due respect, I've already attempted to work through official channels." The response was underwhelming. "If you're actively investigating the Scarlet Vipers, any information I could provide might be valuable." "I'm afraid I can neither confirm nor deny any ongoing investigations, Ms. Hargrove." Parker's tone had become bureaucratic, detached. "Now, if there's nothing else—" "One more thing," Liv interrupted. "Yesterday I observed what appeared to be a human trafficking operation at a warehouse in Tucson. Metal containers being loaded onto an unmarked truck escorted by Scarlet Vipers members. I have photographs." The silence that followed was different, tense, calculating. When Parker spoke again, his voice had dropped to near a whisper. "Delete those photographs, Hargrove. Forget what you saw. And for God's sake, stay away from the Scarlet Vipers." The line went dead. Liv stared at the satellite phone, the implications of Parker's reaction settling like lead in her stomach. Not only was he not building a case against the Scarlet Vipers, he appeared to be actively protecting them. Derek's information had been wrong or deliberately misleading. Bad news. Ellie had returned from the stream, her keen eyes reading Liv's expression. "Not good," Liv admitted, tucking the phone away. "Looks like official channels aren't going to be much help." Ellie settled beside her on the porch steps. "So what now? We just hide out here forever?" "No." Liv's decision crystallized as she spoke. "But now we gather intelligence, build a case so solid that even corrupt officials can't ignore it. And for that, I need to go back down the mountain." Ellie corrected automatically. "We need to go back down. No way. You're not leaving me alone in the middle of nowhere while you go play Rambo." "Ellie, besides, I can help. I'm good with computers, remember? You said they're involved in human trafficking. That means there's digital evidence somewhere." The argument had merit, though Liv was reluctant to admit it. Ellie's technical skills were considerable, and having her along might be safer than leaving her isolated at the cabin, particularly given the revelation about Sheriff Parker. We'd need equipment, Liv thought aloud. Computers, internet access, a secure location. The rehab center has all that, Ellie offered, plus security guards who already know about the situation. Liv shook her head. Too obvious. They've already been there looking for you. What about your friend with the gun shop, the one you mentioned texting yesterday? Liv had nearly forgotten about Morgan Reeves, a former Marine like herself. Morgan had served in a different unit, but had crossed paths with Liv during training. After discharge, he'd open a small gun shop and range outside Phoenix, catering primarily to law enforcement and military clients. They'd stayed loosely in touch over the years, exchanging occasional messages and meeting for coffee maybe once a year. If anyone would understand her situation and have the resources to help, it would be Morgan. That's actually not a bad idea, Liv admitted, but it would mean putting him at risk too. Ellie shrugged with the casual fatalism of adolescence. Seems like everybody's at risk anyway. At least he has guns. The simplistic logic made Liv smile despite herself. I'll reach out to him. No promises. She composed a carefully worded text using the satellite phone's limited messaging function. Morgan, Liv here. Find myself in a situation. Need secure location, digital equipment, and trusted eyes. Traveling with +1. Security concerns. Can you help? The response came less than 5 minutes later. Shop closed tomorrow. Come at 0800. Use rear entrance. Counter surveillance measures advised. We'll be ready. Succinct. Professional. Typical Morgan. Pack your things, Liv told Ellie, already mentally preparing for the journey down the mountain. We leave at dawn. As she gathered supplies and secured the cabin, Liv felt a familiar calm settling over her. The focused clarity that preceded combat operations variables were being eliminated, a plan was forming, allies were being engaged. Whatever the Scarlet Vipers were involved in, whatever corruption protected them, she would uncover it, document it, and if necessary, end it. Lieutenant Hargrove had a mission again, and this time she wouldn't fail. The pre-dawn air carried a desert chill as Liv and Ellie loaded the pickup truck. They worked in near silence, moving with the efficiency of a well-rehearsed routine despite having only known each other in brief visits over the years. Remember, Liv instructed as they pulled away from the cabin. If anything happens to me, there's an envelope in my truck with instructions and contacts people who can help you. Ellie's eyes widened slightly. That's not exactly reassuring. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be practical. Liv navigated the steep mountain track with careful precision. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. That's how you stay alive. As they descended towards civilization, Liv outlined her strategy in terms that wouldn't unnecessarily frighten her niece, but wouldn't sugarcoat the situation either. First, we gather intelligence. We need to understand the full scope of what the Scarlet Vipers are involved in and who's protecting them. Morgan can help with that. He has connections in law enforcement military circles. And if local cops are corrupt, Ellie asked, displaying her typical quick grasp of the situation, then we go federal. FBI, DEA, someone with jurisdiction over human trafficking who won't be influenced by local politics. The sun was creeping over the eastern horizon as they reached the main highway, casting long shadows across the empty road. Liv kept a vigilant eye on her mirrors, watching for any sign of pursuit, though she'd taken a circuitous route designed to shake potential followers. We'll need to stop for supplies before reaching Morgan's place, she decided, pulling into a small-town shopping center just opening for the day. Stay in the truck. I'll be quick. Inside the store, Liv purchased burner phones, basic clothing for both of them, toiletries, and non-perishable food. She paid cash, kept her head angled away from security cameras, and was back in the truck within 15 minutes. Efficient shopping, Ellie commented, rifling through the bags. Very spy movie of you. It's not a movie, Ellie, Liv reminded her sharply. And the goal isn't to be dramatic, it's to be invisible. They changed vehicles twice more before reaching Phoenix, first abandoning the pickup at a long-term parking garage and taking a taxi to a used car lot where Liv purchased a nondescript sedan with cash using one of her alternate IDs. Then just outside Phoenix, they switched to a rental car, acquired under yet another name. Is all this really necessary? Ellie asked as they transferred their meager belongings to the rental. Probably not, Liv admitted, but it's what they call abundance of caution. We don't know what resources these people have or how determined they are. By the time they pulled into the alley behind Morgan's gun emporium, it was precisely 0800. The shop's windows were darkened, a closed sign prominently displayed, but the rear door opened as soon as Liv knocked. Morgan Reeves hadn't changed much in the years since Liv had seen him last, still built like a tank, his dark skin bearing the weathered quality of someone who's spent significant time outdoors. The salt and pepper beard was new, as was the slight limp as he ushered them inside, but the alertness in his eyes was exactly as she remembered. "Liv," he greeted her with a brief, hard hug, looking good for someone who's apparently pissed off an entire motorcycle gang. "You heard. Got some context," keeping an ear to the ground. "Word is the Scarlet Vipers have put out feelers about a female trucker with military training." His gaze shifted to Ellie. "This must be the plus one." "My niece, Ellie. She's more involved than I'd like, but circumstances didn't leave much choice." Morgan extended a hand to Ellie, treating her with the same respect he'd shown Liv. "Any relation of Liv is welcome here. Though I'm guessing this isn't a social call." "Not exactly," Liv confirmed. "We need a secure location to work from, digital equipment and some intelligence on what we're up against." Morgan led them through the shop to a reinforced door at the back, which opened to reveal a staircase. "Got just the thing. Welcome to what my ex-wife used to call the bunker." The basement level of the building had been converted into a combination living quarters and command center. One section contained a small apartment, set-up kitchenette, bathroom, fold-out sofa, and a single bedroom. The other held an impressive array of security monitors, computers, communications equipment, and a large table covered in maps. "You've been busy since we last talked," Liv observed, taking in the sophisticated setup. Morgan shrugged. "Did some contract work for private security firms after leaving the Corps. Paid well enough to set this up. Comes in handy for various projects. Projects like helping fugitive truckers, among other things," he acknowledged with a half-smile. "So how about you tell me what you've stepped in Hargrove, full brief, no redactions." For the next hour, Liv laid out everything: the initial confrontation at Desert Mirage, the ambush attempts, the warehouse observations, the threatening visit to Ellie's rehab center, and Sheriff Parker's suspicious reaction. Morgan listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a tablet. When she finished, he let out a low whistle. "You certainly don't do things halfway. Human trafficking, corrupt law enforcement, organized crime. You've hit the trifecta of trouble." "Tell me something I don't know," Liv replied dryly. "All right." Morgan tapped something on his tablet, bringing up a series of files on the main computer screen. "The Scarlet Vipers aren't just some local nuisance. They've evolved over the past few years from standard motorcycle gang activities, drugs, protection, rackets, the usual, into something more sophisticated." He displayed a series of surveillance photos showing Scarlet Vipers members meeting with well-dressed men in expensive vehicles. "They've become muscle for a larger organization that specializes in moving people across borders, primarily from Mexico into the U.S., but sometimes the reverse for high-value packages. The operation is professional, well-financed, and has protection at multiple levels of local government." "How do you know all this?" Ellie asked, eyes wide as she absorbed the information. Morgan glanced at Liv, who nodded permission. "I do occasional contract work for federal agencies who find local corruption problematic, strictly information gathering. Nothing operational." "You're a spy," Ellie concluded with undisguised admiration. "I prefer independent intelligence contractor," Morgan corrected. "Less dramatic, more accurate." Liv studied the surveillance photos closely. "Any idea who's running the show? The Scarlet Vipers are enforcers, but someone else is calling the shots." "That's where it gets interesting." Morgan brought up another file, a military personnel record partially redacted, but showing a familiar name: Captain Victor Winters, U.S. Navy, retired. The blood drained from Liv's face. "Winters, are you sure?" "Positive. Name means something to you." Liv's mind flashed back to Afghanistan, the school, the explosion, the children. Captain Winters had been the commanding officer who'd given the order to hold fire, the decision that had cost so many lives. "He was my CO in Afghanistan," she said quietly, "during the Kandahar Valley operation." Understanding dawned in Morgan's eyes. Though he hadn't been part of that mission, the disastrous outcome had become notorious within certain military circles. "The school incident," Liv nodded, unwilling to elaborate with Ellie present. "He was forced into early retirement afterward. Military politics." Well, apparently he found a new career, Morgan said grimly. Intelligence suggests he's using his military training and connections to run one of the most sophisticated human trafficking operations in the Southwest, and he's got enough dirt on local officials to ensure minimal interference. The revelation settled like a stone in Liv's stomach. Not just any criminal enterprise, but one led by the man whose orders she had followed to catastrophic effect. The man whose decisions had haunted her nightmares for years. This just got personal, she murmured. It was already personal when they went after Ellie, Morgan reminded her. This just adds another layer. Ellie, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during this exchange, suddenly spoke up. If he was your commander, would he recognize you, know who you are? It was a perceptive question, possibly, Liv acknowledged, though I've changed quite a bit since then. Put on weight, different hairstyle, and snipers generally operate at a distance from command. But he might know your name, Ellie pressed. If the Scarlet Vipers are asking about a female trucker with military training, he might make the connection. The kid's right, Morgan said. If Winters realizes who you are, this becomes even more dangerous. You're not just a witness to their current operations. You're a living reminder of his past failures. Liv absorbed this, recalculating risks and options. So we need to move carefully, gather evidence that's strong enough to interest federal authorities, but do it without exposing ourselves further. Exactly. Morgan turned to a keyboard and began typing. I've got some contacts at the FBI's Phoenix field office, people who specialize in human trafficking cases. They might be interested in what you've seen, especially if we can provide supporting evidence, like the photos you took at the warehouse. That's a start, but we'll need more, Liv said. Shipping manifest financial records, communication logs, something that ties Winters directly to the operation. Ellie leaned forward eagerly. I can help with that. I'm good with computers. Morgan raised an eyebrow at Liv, who shrugged. She's not exaggerating. Got suspended from school twice for hacking the grade system. To fix errors, Ellie clarified defensively, not to change grades. Right, Morgan said skeptically. Well, hacking skills aside, we need to be careful about digital footprints. These people have resources, possibly including surveillance capabilities. He outlined a plan for the next few days: secure communications protocols, intelligence gathering methods, potential evidence sources. Liv and Ellie would remain in the bunker while Morgan maintained his normal routine, above avoiding any suspicious changes that might alert observers. First priority is building a comprehensive file on the operation, he concluded. Locations, personnel, financial connections. Once we have enough, we take it to the feds, not local, straight to the FBI's trafficking task force. It was a solid plan, professional, methodical, the kind of approach that minimized risk while maximizing effectiveness. And yet, as Liv looked at the surveillance photos of Winters, older, grayer, but unmistakably the same man who had ordered her to hold fire while children died, she felt a primal pull toward more direct action. I'll need to retrieve some equipment from my truck, she said, pushing the feeling aside. It's stored in a secure facility in Tucson. Too risky, Morgan countered. They might be watching Transport Hub's storage facilities. Tell me what you need and I'll source it. Liv hesitated. The rifle in her truck's hidden compartment wasn't just equipment. It was part of her identity, a tool she'd used with such precision that it had become an extension of herself. But Morgan was right, returning to Tucson unnecessarily would be tactically unsound. All right, she conceded. I'll make a list. As Morgan showed them the security features of the bunker, multiple exit routes, surveillance cameras covering all approaches, emergency protocols, Liv found herself grateful for his methodical thoroughness. It was the kind of preparation that kept people alive in hostile territory. Get some rest, he advised as he prepared to return to the shop above. You look like you've been running on adrenaline for too long. We'll reconvene this evening. After he'd gone, Ellie explored the living quarters with adolescent curiosity, while Liv conducted her own assessment of the security setup. The bunker was impressive: reinforced walls, redundant power systems, multiple communication options. Morgan had created a fortress within an unassuming gun shop. Your friend is intense, Ellie observed, returning from her exploration. In a good way, I mean. Like he's ready for the zombie apocalypse or something. Liv smiled slightly. Marines tend to be thorough about security, especially ones who've seen combat. Were you like that? Before, I mean. The question carried layers of meaning about who Liv had been, how she had changed what parts of herself she had buried beneath the truck driver persona. In some ways, she admitted, but differently. Morgan is a fortress builder. I was more of a ghost, someone who could move through hostile territory undetected, observe without being observed. A sniper, Ellie said quietly. Liv nodded, surprising herself with her willingness to acknowledge it. Yes, one of the best, actually. That's why you're not afraid of these biker guys, isn't it? Because you've faced worse. I am afraid, Liv corrected. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you careful. I'm just trained to function despite it. Ellie considered this, then asked the question Liv had been dreading. Did you kill people in Afghanistan? There was no judgment in her tone, just genuine curiosity. Liv could have deflected, changed the subject, but something in her niece's direct gaze demanded honesty. Yes, she said simply. That was my job, to eliminate threats from a distance to protect our forces and civilians. Was it hard, the shooting? No, I was very good at it. The aftermath, sometimes, especially when things went wrong, like with Captain Winters, the school incident. Liv's jaw tightened. That's a conversation for another time. Right now, we should both get some rest. Tomorrow we'll be busy. Ellie looked like she wanted to press further, but ultimately nodded, retreating to the small bedroom, while Liv claimed the fold-out sofa in the main room. Sleep came reluctantly, and when it did, the dreams returned, desert heat, the weight of the rifled children's voices carried on the wind. But this time a new element intruded, Victor Winter's face watching impassively as the school erupted in flames. The next 3 days fell into a rhythm of intelligence gathering, analysis, and planning. Morgan maintained his normal routine at the gun shop, interacting with customers, suppliers, and local law enforcement as if nothing had changed. Meanwhile, in the bunker below, Liv and Ellie pieced together the structure of Winter's operation. Ellie proved her technical worth, quickly using the secure systems Morgan provided to navigate digital landscapes with impressive skill. She tracked shipping manifests, cross-referenced warehouse ownerships, and mapped transportation routes with an intuition that belied her age. The warehouse where you saw those containers, she announced on the second day, swiveling her computer screen toward Liv. It's owned by a shell company called Meridian Logistics, which is owned by another shell company called Southwest Holdings, which is owned by, let me guess, Liv interrupted, a company connected to Winters. Bingo, Winter Shield Security, founded by one Victor Winters 3 years after his retirement from the Navy. It was solid evidence linking Winters to the facilities Liv had observed, but still circumstantial. They needed more. Morgan contributed intelligence from his contacts, Border Patrol officers who reported unusual patterns of enforcement areas suddenly declared low priority despite heavy trafficking activity. Police officers who'd been warned away from certain investigations or locations. It's systematic, he explained, marking locations on a digital map. They've created corridors through Arizona paths where enforcement is minimal by design. People, drugs, weapons, anything can move through these channels with minimal risk of interdiction. And the Scarlet Vipers maintain these corridors, Liv added, seeing the pattern. Intimidating locals, eliminating potential witnesses, providing security for shipments. Exactly. They're the muscle that keeps the pipeline flowing. By the third day, they had compiled a substantial file, ownership records, financial transactions, surveillance photos, testimony from Morgan's confidential sources. It painted a compelling picture of a sophisticated operation with Winters at its center and corrupted officials providing protection at key points. This should be enough to interest the feds, Morgan said, reviewing their findings. My contact at the FBI's trafficking task force can meet tomorrow. Secure location, no local involvement. Liv nodded, satisfied with their progress, but still unsettled by the personal connection to Winters. We need to consider what happens after. If they move on this information, the Scarlet Vipers will know someone talked. They'll come looking. We'll cross that bridge when we reach it, Morgan assured him. For now, let's focus on getting this information to people who can act on it, legally. But that evening, while Ellie was engrossed in some digital task, Liv pulled Morgan aside for a private conversation. I need to ask a favor, she said quietly. If something happens to me, Ellie needs protection, not just temporarily, but long-term. Morgan studied her with concern. Planning on martyring yourself, Hargrove? No, just being practical. Winters isn't the type to forgive and forget. Even if he goes down for this operation, he has connections. People who owe him favors. Ellie could remain a target. What about her mother? Your sister, Liv sighed. Still in rehab, uncertain recovery. Ellie needs stability, security. And you're thinking I could provide that. You or someone you trust. I have funds set aside enough to cover expenses, education. She just needs someone to watch over her until she's old enough to make her own way. Morgan was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Consider it done. But this is a contingency plan only. Understood? Understood. I'm not in the market for sudden parenthood. Me neither, Morgan grinned. Too set in my ways for teenage drama. Liv felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Having a backup plan for Ellie's security allowed her to focus more fully on the immediate threat. Later that night, after both Ellie and Morgan had retired, Liv remained at the command center studying the evidence they'd gathered. Surveillance photos of Winters showed a man who had aged but not softened since Afghanistan. His posture still military straight, his expression still carrying that peculiar blend of confidence and detachment that had made him both respected and feared as a commander. What had turned him from a decorated naval officer to the architect of a human trafficking empire, Liv wondered. Greed, bitterness over his forced retirement, or had the seeds always been there, the potential for corruption, merely waiting for the right circumstances? She was so absorbed in these thoughts that she almost missed the alert from one of Morgan's perimeter cameras, a subtle flashing indicator showing movement in the alley behind the shop. Liv expanded the feed, watching as a motorcycle pulled up its rider, dismounting, with practiced ease, a Scarlet Viper, judging by the leather vest visible beneath his jacket. Liv's pulse quickened as she tracked the man's movements on multiple cameras. He wasn't approaching the shop directly, but instead surveying it from different angles, testing door handles on neighboring buildings, his behavior suggesting reconnaissance rather than immediate threat. She debated waking Morgan, but decided against it. The biker wasn't actively attempting entry, just gathering information. Still, his presence confirmed what they had feared. The Scarlet Vipers were expanding their search-checking businesses with potential connections to Liv. After about 20 minutes of surveillance, the biker returned to his motorcycle and departed. Liv logged the incident, capturing clear images of the man's face and his vehicle's license plate. It was concerning but not unexpected. Morgan's security measures would prevent casual observation from detecting their presence in the bunker. Nevertheless, the incident added urgency to their timeline. If the Scarlet Vipers were already checking Morgan's shop, their window for safely transferring information to federal authorities was narrowing. Liv sent a text to Morgan's secure phone nighttime visitor. Scarlet Viper, reconnaissance only. Need to accelerate timeline. His reply came moments later. Understood. We'll contact FBI first thing. Be ready to move. Sleep was impossible after that. Liv spent the remaining hours of darkness reviewing their escape routes, checking equipment, mentally rehearsing scenarios. When Ellie emerged from her room around dawn, she found her aunt fully dressed and alert, a cup of cold coffee forgotten beside her. You look intense, Ellie observed, helping herself to cereal from the kitchenette. Something happened. We had a visitor last night, one of the Scarlet Vipers checking out the shop. Just looking, not entering. But it means they're expanding their search. Ellie's eyes widened slightly, but she maintained her composure. So what's the plan? Morgan is contacting his FBI connection now. If all goes well, we'll transfer our evidence file today and let the professionals take over. And if it doesn't go well, Liv met her niece's gaze directly. Then we implement Plan B, exfiltration to a secondary location. Reassessment of options. You sound like you're in a military operation. Ellie noted, a hint of nervousness finally breaking through her practiced nonchalance. Old habits, Liv admitted, but effective ones. Morgan joined them an hour later, his expression grim. Good news and bad news, he announced without preamble. Good news, my FBI contact is still willing to meet. Bad news, it can't happen here. They want a neutral location midway between Phoenix and Tucson. That's a lot of empty desert, Liv observed. Tactically problematic. Agreed, but they're insistent. I've suggested a truck stop off Highway 87, public enough to discourage immediate action, remote enough for privacy. Meeting set for 1400 hours. Liv considered the parameters. A public location offered certain advantages, witnesses, security cameras, but also increased the risk of being spotted by Scarlet Vipers or their informants. We'll need to move cautiously, she decided. Approach from multiple directions. Counter-surveillance measures, emergency extraction plan. Morgan nodded, already pulling up satellite imagery of the proposed meeting location. I've asked my contact to come alone, no local involvement, no task force backup until after they've reviewed our evidence. Can we trust them? Ellie asked the practical question, cutting through the tactical discussion. As much as we can trust anyone in this situation, Morgan replied honestly. They've worked legitimate trafficking cases before secured convictions, but caution is still warranted. They spent the morning organizing their evidence into a comprehensive briefing packet, establishing communications protocols, planning approach and departure routes. Liv insisted on redundant systems for everything, a practice that had kept her alive through multiple combat deployments. Ellie stays here, she declared when Morgan suggested they all attend the meeting. Safer in the bunker than exposed in the field. Well, for once, Ellie didn't argue, perhaps finally grasping the gravity of the situation. I'll monitor communications from here, she offered instead. Be your eyes and ears. Morgan provided her with access to his security systems in a secure communication channel. Any sign of trouble at the shop, you hit this panic button, he instructed, showing her a red switch near the main console. It alerts a private security team. They'll extract you to a safe location. At noon, they made final preparations for departure. Liv checked the weapons. Morgan had provided a compact 9mm Glock, similar to her own, plus a backup piece for her ankle holster. Nothing that would draw attention if concealed properly, but enough firepower to create an exit opportunity if needed. You remember the emergency protocols? She asked Ellie one final time. Yes, Aunt Liv, her niece replied with exaggerated patience. Panic button for shop intrusion. Secure phone for communication issues. Emergency exit through the tunnel system if both of those fail. Rendezvous at the secondary location in Flagstaff. Good. Liv pulled her niece into a brief, fierce hug. We'll be back before dinner. Stay alert. As she and Morgan prepared to leave through one of the bunker's alternate exits, a tunnel that led to a storage unit 2 buildings away, Liv felt a familiar pre-mission tension settling into her muscles. Not fear exactly, but heightened awareness, every sense tuned to maximum sensitivity. Just like old times, huh? Hargrove, Morgan commented as they moved through the narrow passage, except with less sand and more motorcycle gangs. And higher stakes, Liv added quietly, at least for me. Morgan nodded understanding. He knew what it meant to have family involved, to be fighting not just for a mission, but for someone you loved. They emerged from the tunnel into a nondescript storage unit where Morgan had prepared another vehicle, a work van bearing the logo of a fictional plumbing company. Anonymous, forgettable, practical. I'll drive first leg, he said, climbing behind the wheel. You keep watch. We'll switch halfway, approach the meeting point from different directions. Liv settled into the passenger seat, her tactical mind already mapping potential threats, escape routes, contingencies. As they pulled onto Phoenix's busy streets, blending seamlessly with midday traffic, she allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. After years of running from her past, from who she had been, Lieutenant Olivia Hargrove was fully operational again. For better or worse, the warrior had returned, and this time failure was not an option. The highway stretched before them, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through Arizona's desert landscape. They'd switched positions as planned, with Liv now driving, while Morgan monitored communications and surveillance equipment set up in the van's cargo area. Still clear, he reported, after completing another sweep for potential tails. No unusual traffic patterns, no consistent vehicles. Liv nodded, her eyes constantly checking the mirrors, cataloging every car that approached or passed them. Years of combat driving in hostile territory had ingrained habits that civilian life had never fully erased. How's our timeline? On schedule. ETA at the meeting point in 22 minutes. FBI contact confirmed they're en route, traveling alone as requested. Still no movement on the shop's security feeds. None. Ellie reports all clear. The normalcy was almost disorienting after days of high alert. No pursuit, no ambushes, no threats materializing from the desert heat. Just an ordinary drive on an ordinary afternoon. It feels too easy, Liv admitted, voicing the unease that had been building since they had left Phoenix without incident. Sometimes operations go according to plan, Morgan reminded her. Not often in my experience, but it happens. Maybe, Liv conceded, though her instincts continued to signal caution. Or maybe we're walking into something we don't see yet. The Desert Oasis truck stop appeared on the horizon, a collection of low buildings shimmering in the afternoon heat. Liv reduced speed approaching with tactical awareness, noting entry and exit points, potential cover lines of sight. 6 vehicles in the lot, she reported. 2 semis, 1 RV, 3 passenger cars, no motorcycles visible, no obvious surveillance positions. Looks clean, Morgan agreed, scanning through binoculars. FBI contact should arrive from the south in approximately 7 minutes. We proceed with the original plan. Liv considered, then nodded. I'll enter first. Secure a booth with good visibility. You bring the package once our contact arrives. Usual recognition signals. They parked the van at the far end of the lot, positioning it for a quick departure if needed. Liv exited first, moving with the unhurried confidence of a truck driver on a regular stop. Her weapons were concealed, but accessible, her bearing unremarkable to casual observation. Inside the diner was sparsely populated, a couple of truckers at the counter, a family with 2 children in a corner booth, an elderly couple near the entrance. Liv selected a booth near the rear, with clear sight lines to both the entrance and the emergency exit, her back to the wall. A waitress approached, middle-aged and efficiently friendly. Coffee hunt, please, Liv replied, adopting the weary demeanor of a driver on a long haul. And a menu. She ordered a sandwich she had no intention of eating, maintaining her cover while discreetly observing the other patrons. No one paid her particular attention. No one exhibited the alertness or positioning that might indicate a threat. Through the window, she watched as a dark sedan pulled into the lot, government issue, without being obviously so. Right on time, their FBI contact had arrived. Morgan remained in the van, watching through binoculars as a woman emerged from the sedan, mid-30s business attire, moving with the purposeful stride of law enforcement. She approached the diner alone, no obvious backup visible. Liv's phone vibrated with a text from Morgan. Visual confirmation matches known appearance of Agent Vega. Proceeding as planned. The woman entered the diner, pausing briefly to scan the interior before approaching the counter. She ordered coffee, then casually surveyed the room again, her gaze pausing momentarily on Liv, noting her position without obvious recognition. After receiving her coffee, Agent Vega selected a booth 2 away from Liv, positioning herself with similar tactical awareness. She placed a newspaper on the table, open to the crossword puzzle, the recognition signal they'd arranged. Liv responded by placing her trucker's cap on the table beside her coffee cup, brim facing the agent. Confirmation complete. 3 minutes later, Morgan entered carrying a nondescript laptop bag containing their evidence file. He nodded to Liv as he passed, then slid into the booth across from Agent Vega. Their conversation was brief, professional, conducted in low tones that wouldn't carry to neighboring tables. Liv maintained her position, monitoring the diner's entrance and the parking lot beyond. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The exchange was happening without incident. Perhaps her earlier unease had been unwarranted. Then her phone vibrated again. Not Morgan's this time, but a message from Ellie. Emergency. Shop under surveillance. Multiple vehicles, armed men. Ice flooded Liv's veins. She immediately texted Morgan, compromise at base. Accelerate and extract. She watched as Morgan read the message, his expression never changing, though his posture subtly shifted to higher alert. He said something to Agent Vega, who glanced briefly at her own phone before nodding. The evidence transfer was completed in under 30 seconds, files transferred to an encrypted drive, documentation handed over in a sealed envelope. Professional, efficient, exactly as planned. But as Morgan rose to leave the diner, the entrance swung open, admitting a figure that sent Liv's combat instincts into overdrive. Derek Walsh, the truck driver who had first suggested she contact Sheriff Parker about the Scarlet Vipers. He wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, their casual clothing failing to conceal the predatory alertness of professionals. Not Scarlet Vipers, these were different, more disciplined, military-trained, if Liv had to guess. Derek's eyes swept the diner, passing over Liv without recognition before landing on Agent Vega and Morgan, still standing beside her booth. A slow smile spread across his face, not surprise, but confirmation. "Well, well," he said loudly enough for the entire diner to hear. "Fancy meeting you here, Reeves, and with the Fed no less. Captain Winters sends his regards." Time compressed into tactical fragments as Liv assessed the situation. 3 hostiles at the entrance, Morgan and Agent Vega exposed in the middle of the diner. Civilian bystanders, the family with children, the elderly couple, the truckers at the counter. Multiple variables, minimal cover, high risk of collateral damage. She remained motionless, leveraging her greatest advantage. Derek hadn't recognized her. In her current size and appearance, Sitting quietly in a corner booth, she bore little resemblance to the Navy SEAL he might have been briefed about. Morgan maintained remarkable composure, his expression betraying nothing as he casually placed his hand on the diner table. "Didn't expect to see you here, Walsh. Who are your friends?" "Just some colleagues interested in your conversation with the FBI." Derek replied, his tone conversational, though his eyes remained coldly alert. "Particularly that file you just handed over." Agent Vega stood slowly, her hand drifting toward her concealed weapon. "I'm a federal agent. Whatever you're planning, you should reconsider." One of Derek's companions, a hard-faced man with a military bearing, chuckled. "Being federal just means you should know better than to get involved in matters above your pay grade, ma'am." The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Liv could see the other diners beginning to sense the tension, the mother pulling her children closer, the truckers shifting uncomfortably. She needed a distraction, something to create space for Morgan and Vega to maneuver without endangering civilians. Decision made, Liv grabbed her coffee mug and dropped it deliberately. The ceramics shattered on the linoleum floor with a crash that drew every eye in the diner, including Derek's. In that moment of diverted attention, several things happened simultaneously. Morgan flipped the table upward as a makeshift barrier, shoving Agent Vega toward the rear exit. The agent recovered quickly, drawing her weapon and shouting, "Federal agent, everyone down!" Derek's companions reached for concealed weapons, but the unexpected commotion had disrupted their timing. The civilian patrons reacted to Agent Vega's command, dropping to the floor or scrambling for cover, creating further chaos. Liv utilized the confusion to draw her own weapon, moving laterally along the wall toward the kitchen area, seeking a flanking position. Her size, which many mistook for a disadvantage, allowed her to project considerable momentum as she shouldered through the swinging kitchen door. The first shots were fired not from Liv or Morgan, but from Derek's military-trained companions. Bullets splintered wood as Morgan ducked behind an overturned table, returning fire with controlled precision. Through the kitchen window, Liv could see Agent Vega shepherding civilians pushed toward the rear exit, her weapon trained on the front entrance. Professional, admirable, protecting innocence while maintaining tactical awareness. Liv moved through the kitchen, ignoring the startled cries of cooks and dishwashers as she positioned herself for a clear shot through the service window. From this angle, she could see Derek directing his men, one flanking left, while the other laid down covering fire. She took aim at the flanking man first, the greater immediate threat to Morgan. A single shot placed with sniper precision despite the compact handgun caught him in the shoulder of his gun arm. Not fatal, but immediately incapacitating. He dropped weapon, clattering across the linoleum. The second gunman swiveled toward the new threat, but Liv had already ducked below the service window, changing position before he could acquire his target. Classic sniper tactics applies to close quarters, combat: shoot and move. Never remain stationary. Deny the enemy a fixed target. "Hargrove," Derek's voice carried over the commotion. "I know you're here. This doesn't have to get messy." So he did know who she was, after all, had been playing her from the beginning, gathering information while pretending to be an ally. "Too late for that," Liv muttered, calculating angles for her next move. A crash from the front of the diner indicated Morgan was creating his own distraction, likely upending another table or chair. Liv used the moment to emerge from the kitchen through a side door, weapon ready, giving her a clear line of sight to Derek. He spotted her immediately, his expression shifting from tactical confidence to momentary surprise as he registered her appearance, so different from the Navy SEAL he had expected. "Lieutenant Hargrove," he said, recovering quickly. "You've changed." "Not where it counts," Liv replied, her weapon unwavering. "Drop it, Walsh. Your men are down. The feds have your operations details and there's nowhere to go." Derek's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Always the strategist, but you've miscalculated this time. We have your niece." Ice flooded Liv's veins, but she kept her expression neutral, her aim steady. "You're lying." "Am I?" Derek pulled out his phone, turning the screen toward her. On it, a security camera feed showed the gun shop, Morgan's shop, with several armed men entering through what appeared to be a side entrance. "Right about now, they're finding the bunker. Clever setup, by the way, but not clever enough." Liv's mind raced. The panic button would have alerted Ellie to any breach. She would have followed the emergency protocols, used the escape tunnel, unless they had somehow blocked that route as well. "She's not there," Liv stated with more confidence than she felt. "And neither is the evidence that matters. It's already in federal hands." Agent Vega had successfully evacuated the civilians and was now approaching from behind Derek, her weapon trained on his back. "Drop your weapon," she commanded. "FBI, you're under arrest." Derek laughed, a genuine sound of amusement that chilled Liv more than any threat could have. "You really don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? This goes beyond badges and jurisdiction." "Maybe," Morgan's voice came from Liv's left as he emerged from cover, his own weapon fixed on Derek. "But it doesn't go beyond bullets. Last chance, Walsh. Drop it." Surrounded on three sides, Derek should have recognized the futility of resistance. Instead, his expression became almost serene. "Captain Winters said you'd be formidable, Hargrove. He's looking forward to seeing you again." With deliberate slowness, Derek lowered his weapon to the ground. "Consider this round yours, but the game is just beginning." As Agent Vega moved in to secure him, Liv's phone vibrated in her pocket. A text from Ellie's safe. "Use the tunnel. At secondary location per protocol." Relief washed through her immediately, followed by renewed tactical focus. Derek's confidence despite capture suggested this was merely one move in a larger strategy. Winters, the true threat, remained at large, apparently aware of their actions and preparing countermoves. "We need to move," she told Morgan, keeping her voice low. "This location is compromised, and Walsh is too calm for someone who just lost." Morgan nodded agreement. "Agent Vega," he called, "we have confirmation of an attack on our base location. Recommend immediate relocation with the prisoner to a secure federal facility." Vega, who had handcuffed Derek and was reciting his rights with professional detachment, glanced up sharply. "How many hostiles at your location?" "Unknown," Liv replied, "but my niece escaped safely. She's at our predetermined fallback position." "Backup is already en route to this location," Vega informed them, maintaining control of Derek. "ETA 3 minutes. We'll secure the prisoner and provide escort to retrieve your niece." It was a solid tactical plan, but Liv's instincts warned against remaining in place even briefly. Derek's continued smile suggested he knew something they didn't. Her suspicion proved correct moments later, when the distinctive rumble of motorcycle engines became audible from the highway. Multiple bikes approaching at high speed. "Scarlet Vipers," Morgan confirmed, moving to the window for visual confirmation. "At least 8 riders heavily armed." "They're not here for a rescue," Derek commented casually. "Just clean up. The captain doesn't tolerate loose ends." The implications were clear. The approaching bikers weren't coming to free Derek. They were coming to eliminate him as a potential source of information, along with anyone else present. "Change of plans," Agent Vega decided, all professional efficiency. "We extract now. My vehicle has ballistic protection. We'll take the prisoner and rendezvous with backup en route." Liv and Morgan exchanged looks, silently calculating the odds. Agent Vega's government sedan might offer some protection, but against multiple armed attackers, the advantage would be minimal. "We split up," Liv counter-proposed. "Morgan and I will draw them off in our van, more mobile, less obvious target. You take Walsh and the evidence file directly to federal custody." "Too risky," Vega argued. "Standard protocol." "With respect, Agent," Morgan interrupted, "we're beyond standard protocol. 8 armed hostiles inbound. Unknown additional forces potentially converging on this location. Tactical dispersion increases survival probability for all assets." The approaching motorcycle engines grew louder now, visible on the highway less than half a mile away. 60 seconds to contact," Liv warned, already moving toward the rear exit. "Decision time, Agent." Vega hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Dispersion it is. Rendezvous at Phoenix FBI field office. I'll ensure secure reception." She tightened her grip on Derek's handcuffs. "Don't try anything clever, Walsh. My sidearm has excellent stopping power at this range." Derek's smile never faltered. "Wouldn't dream of it, Agent." They separated at the rear exit, Vega dragging Derek toward her sedan, parked at the side of the building, while Liv and Morgan sprinted for their van at the far end of the lot. The timing was precise, coordinated, without need for verbal communication, as the first Scarlet Viper's bikes roared into the parking area from the front. Both vehicles were already in motion, pulling away in opposite directions. Liv took the wheel, her combat driving skills essential now, as she executed a perfect J-turn, deliberately making their departure visible to the approaching bikers. "We need to be the more attractive target," she explained, accelerating hard onto the highway heading north. "Give Vega time to clear the area with the evidence and prisoner." The ploy worked. 6 of the 8 motorcycles immediately peeled off in pursuit of the van, likely recognizing Morgan from previous surveillance. "We've got company," Morgan confirmed, checking the side mirrors. 6 bikes, all armed. Looks like they're carrying pistols, possibly shotguns. "Get on the satellite phone," Liv instructed, pushing the van to its limits on the open highway. "Contact Ellie. Make sure she stays at the secondary location until we confirm it's secure." As Morgan made the call, Liv focused on evasive driving, utilizing the desert landscape to her advantage. The van was no match for motorcycles in terms of speed, but the bike's maneuverability was limited on the loose desert soil alongside the highway. The first shots came as the lead rider pulled alongside, aiming a handgun at their tires. Liv swerved sharply, forcing him onto the shoulder, where his bike momentarily lost traction. "They're trying to disarm the vehicle, not kill us outright," she noted. "They want us alive for questioning." "Small comfort," Morgan replied dryly, bracing himself against the dashboard as Liv executed another evasive maneuver. "Ellie confirms she's secure using the emergency protocols we established." "Good. At least that part of the plan was working. Now they just needed to shake their pursuit and rendezvous with Agent Vega at the FBI field office." The highway curved ahead, revealing a dirt access road that cut through the desert toward distant mountains. Liv made a split-second decision, wrenching the wheel hard to the right and plunging the van off the paved surface onto the rough track. The sudden change of direction caught their pursuers by surprise. 2 bikes overshot the turn while the others struggled to adjust to the deteriorating surface conditions. The van bounced violently over ruts and rocks, but its 4-wheel drive handled the terrain better than the motorcycles. "Smart move," Morgan acknowledged, checking their tactical situation. "But this road has to lead somewhere, Liv. Any idea where we're heading?" Liv had noticed something on their approach, a cloud of dust approximately 3 miles ahead, suggesting mining operations or construction. Possible cover ahead, some kind of industrial site. As they crested a small rise, the source of the dust became visible: an active open-pit mine, complete with heavy machinery, administrative buildings, and the constant movement of massive trucks hauling ore. "Perfect," Liv declared, accelerating toward the site. "Multiple vehicles, workers, security. They can't risk open conflict in a civilian industrial operation." The remaining 4 Scarlet Vipers continued their pursuit, but maintained greater distance, now clearly reassessing their approach given the new complications. Liv drove directly into the mining operation, past a startled security guard at a checkpoint who barely had time to register their arrival before they were among the buildings and equipment. She navigated the complex with tactical precision, using the massive haul trucks and processing facilities as cover, creating a maze that their motorcycle pursuers couldn't easily penetrate. "We need to ditch the van," she decided, spotting an employee parking area near what appeared to be administrative offices. "Switch to alternative transportation. Those bikes will find us eventually if we keep driving this." Morgan nodded in agreement, already scanning for suitable replacement vehicles. "Maintenance truck's keys likely in the ignition for quick response to equipment issues." Liv parked the van between 2 larger vehicles, providing momentary concealment as they quickly transferred essential equipment to backpacks, weapons, ammunition, communications gear, emergency supplies. "Split up again," Morgan suggested, nodding towards separate maintenance trucks parked at opposite ends of the lot. "Negative," Liv replied after brief consideration. "Better tactical flexibility together. And I need your help to reach Ellie." They selected a heavy-duty pickup with mining company logos on the doors, anonymous among dozens of similar vehicles moving around the site. As expected, the keys were in the ignition, the engine starting immediately when Liv turned the key. "Scarlet Vipers at the main entrance," Morgan reported, watching through compact binoculars. "Being detained by security. That won't last long once they flash whatever credentials Winters has provided them." "Then we use the service exit," Liv decided, having noted a secondary gate during their entry. "Maintenance vehicles use it regularly. We'll blend right in." The plan worked flawlessly. They drove past the service gate with a casual wave to the attendant, who barely glanced up from his smartphone, as another routine maintenance truck departed the facility. Once clear, Liv took a series of back roads, heading west, away from both the highway, where they'd been pursued, and the direct route to Phoenix. "We need to circle around," she explained, navigating from memory rather than GPS, which could potentially be tracked. "Approach the secondary location from an unexpected direction. Assume Winters has resources monitoring major roads." Morgan checked the satellite phone, ensuring secure communication. Should we contact Agent Vega, confirm she reached safety with the prisoner and evidence? Liv considered the risks. Not yet. If her transport was compromised, our communication could reveal our position. We stick to the original plan, rendezvous at the Phoenix field office after retrieving Ellie. The secondary location, their predetermined fallback point, if the bunker was compromised, was a small cabin owned by one of Morgan's former military colleagues located in a remote area outside Flagstaff. Approaching from the west required navigating primitive Forest Service roads, but offered the advantage of minimal surveillance possibilities. No signs of pursuit, Morgan confirmed after another scan of their surroundings. I think we're clear for now. Liv nodded, but her tactical mind was already analyzing the broader situation. This was too coordinated to be coincidence. Derek knew about our meeting with Agent Vega, knew about the bunker. Winter's organization had teams in position, both in Phoenix and at the diner simultaneously. Meaning we have a leak, Morgan concluded grimly. Someone connected to either my FBI contact or our own operation. The implications were disturbing. If Winters had infiltrated federal law enforcement, then even the evidence they'd provided to Agent Vega might not lead to prosecution. Worse, Ellie could remain a target as long as Winters' operation continued. We need to consider the possibility that conventional channels won't resolve this, Liv said carefully, that Winters' influence extends too far for legal measures alone. Morgan studied her profile. What are you suggesting, Hargrove? I'm not suggesting anything yet, just acknowledging tactical realities. Her grip tightened on the steering wheel. But I won't leave Ellie vulnerable to these people, whatever it takes. The unspoken implication hung between them, the possibility that Winters might need to be addressed directly outside legal frameworks. It was a line neither of them as former military personnel would cross lightly. But for family, for an innocent child, the calculations changed. Let's focus on immediate objectives, Morgan suggested pragmatically. Retrieve Ellie, confirm Agent Vega's status, assess the integrity of the evidence transfer. Then we can determine next steps based on tactical realities. Liv nodded agreement, grateful for his professional approach. The cabin appeared ahead as they rounded a final bend in the Forest Service road, a simple structure nestled among pine trees with a single vehicle parked outside that Morgan recognized as belonging to his colleague. No other vehicles, no signs of surveillance or combat. Good. They approached cautiously, nonetheless, Morgan taking point with his weapon ready while Liv covered their flanks. The cabin door opened before they reached it, revealing Ellie's anxious face, which immediately brightened upon seeing them. "You made it," she exclaimed, rushing forward to embrace her aunt. "I was so worried when the alarm went off at the shop. Mike said you'd be fine, but I couldn't be sure until I saw you." Mike, presumably Morgan's colleague, appeared in the doorway behind her, a lean, weathered man with the quiet confidence of special operations background. He nodded acknowledgement to them both. "Perimeter secure," he reported without preamble. "No unusual activity since the girl arrived. She followed protocols precisely. You trained her well." "She's a natural," Liv replied, returning Ellie's hug with fierce protectiveness. "Thank you for watching over her." Inside the cabin was Spartan but secure, reinforced doors, shuttered windows, emergency supplies stacked neatly in one corner. Tactical minimalism that Liv appreciated. "What happened after I left?" Ellie asked as they settled around a small table. "Did you meet the FBI agent? Did they get the evidence?" Liv exchanged glances with Morgan, considering how much to share. But treating Ellie like a child to be protected from harsh realities hadn't worked so far. Better to be honest within appropriate boundaries. "We met the agent," she confirmed, transferred the evidence, but we were interrupted by Derek Walsh, the trucker. "I mentioned who apparently works for Winters. Then the Scarlet Vipers showed up. We separated from Agent Vega, who took Derek into custody." "Are they okay?" Ellie asked, her maturity once again surprising Liv. "The FBI agent, I mean." "Unknown," Morgan answered honestly. "We need to confirm her status and the security of the evidence file." Mike, who had been listening silently, spoke up. "My contacts might help with that. Let me make some calls." He stepped outside with a satellite phone similar to Morgan's, giving them privacy. "So what's the plan now?" Ellie looked between Liv and Morgan expectantly. "Are we just going to hide until the FBI arrests everyone?" The question cut to the heart of the dilemma they faced. If Agent Vega had successfully delivered Derek and the evidence to federal custody, and if that evidence wasn't suppressed by Winter's influence, then perhaps the legal system would function as intended. But those were significant ifs. We're going to verify that the evidence reached the proper authorities, Liv explained carefully, then determine next steps based on that information. And if it didn't, Ellie pressed, intuitive as always, if this Captain Winters person has too many connections, Liv met her niece's gaze directly, then we consider alternatives. Before Ellie could inquire further, Mike returned, his expression grim. Got word from my contact at Phoenix PD. There was an incident on Highway 87 approximately 30 minutes after you split up. Agent Vega's vehicle was found abandoned. Signs of combat blood at the scene, no bodies recovered. The news hit like a physical blow. And Derek, Morgan asked, though they all suspected the answer. No sign of him, either presumed taken by whoever ambushed them. Liv closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the implications. Agent Vega had likely been attacked by the two Scarlet Vipers who hadn't pursued their van. Whether she was alive or dead remained unknown, but the evidence file was almost certainly compromised. What about the federal response? Morgan pressed. Surely the FBI has protocols when an agent goes missing. They do, Mike confirmed. But here's where it gets strange. According to my contact, the investigation has been reassigned to a special task force overseen by, get this, an advisory committee that includes retired Captain Victor Winters as a security consultant. The tactical significance was unmistakable. Winters was positioned to control the investigation into his own operations attack on a federal agent. So we're on our own, Liv concluded, the final pieces falling into place. No legal recourse, no federal backup. Ellie looked between the adults, her expression solemn. What happens now? Liv met Morgan's gaze, then Mike, seeing in both men the same cold resolution she felt forming in her own heart. There were moments in combat when the mission parameters shifted, when the acceptable boundaries of action expanded in response to immediate threat. This was one of those moments. Now, Liv said, decision crystallizing, we take the fight directly to Winters. The hours that followed were dedicated to tactical planning, drawing on the combined experience of 3 combat veterans and the unexpected technical assistance of one determined teenager. Mike's cabin became an impromptu command center map spread across tables, communication equipment, established intelligence gathered from multiple sources. Ellie, proving her worth yet again, used the satellite internet connection to hack into transportation records, identifying likely locations for Winters' operations based on shipping patterns and property holdings. His main base appears to be here, she indicated, pointing to a compound located in a remote area near the Mexican border. It's registered as a private security training facility, but satellite imagery shows it's basically a fortress. High walls, guard towers, internal structures, consistent with both residential and operational facilities. Liv studied the imagery with professional assessment. Significant defensive capabilities. Multiple approaches, all likely monitored. Interior courtyard for helicopter operations. Not an easy target. Conventional assault would be suicide, Morgan agreed. Even with our combined experience, we're talking about a facility designed by a Navy captain with paranoid tendencies and unlimited resources. So we don't use conventional tactics, Liv concluded, the strategic approach already forming in her mind. We use psychological warfare. Winters knows me, knows my capabilities. We leverage that. Mike raised an eyebrow. You're suggesting using yourself as bait? Not exactly, Liv clarified. More like a ghost. Winters believes I'm still the same sniper he commanded in Afghanistan. He expects certain tactics, certain approaches. We give him just enough to confirm those expectations, then exploit the psychological impact. You mean scare the hell out of him? Morgan translated, a glimmer of appreciation in his eyes. Make him think he's being hunted by his own former weapon. Exactly. Precision strikes at peripheral targets, evidence of surveillance he can't trace, gradual isolation from his support network. Liv's voice had taken on the clinical detachment of a tactical briefing. We don't have to defeat his entire organization. Just create enough pressure that he makes mistakes. Ellie, who had been listening intently, spoke up. What about Agent Vega? If she's still alive, Winters might be holding her at that compound. It was a complication Liv had already factored into her planning. We'll need reconnaissance first, confirm facility personnel, identify potential hostage locations. If Agent Vega is there, extraction becomes a priority. The planning continued well into the night, each phase meticulously detailed, contingencies established, equipment requirements identified. Morgan and Mike would handle logistics, leveraging their connections to acquire necessary tactical gear without alerting Winter's network. The question of Ellie's safety during the operation remained. Liv was adamant that her niece be removed completely from the zone of danger, perhaps even flown to another state under an assumed identity until the situation was resolved. Ellie predictably had other ideas. "I'm not leaving," she declared when Liv proposed the relocation plan. "I can help with technical support, communications, surveillance feeds. You need someone monitoring systems while you're in the field." "It's too dangerous," Liv insisted. "If anything happened to you, it's dangerous everywhere until Winters is stopped," Ellie countered with impeccable logic. "At least here I'm with people who can protect me and I'm being useful." The argument continued until Morgan proposed a compromise. Ellie would remain with Mike at a secondary operations base far from any direct action, but close enough to provide technical support. She would be surrounded by security measures and emergency extraction protocols. Reluctantly, Liv agreed, recognizing the pragmatic value of Ellie's technical skills balanced against the imperative to keep her safe. As final preparations were made, Liv found herself alone with her niece on the cabin's small porch, the night sky brilliant with stars above the Arizona desert. "You're going after him directly, aren't you?" Ellie asked quietly. "Captain Winters, this isn't just about disrupting his operation or rescuing Agent Vega." Liv considered deflecting but opted for honesty. "He's the head of the snake. As long as he's operational, his organization remains a threat to you, to others. And yes, there's a personal element. He's responsible for deaths I couldn't prevent in Afghanistan. Children who might have lived and if he'd made different choices. Like the ones at the school," Ellie said, confirming she'd pieced together the fragments of information she'd gathered. "The ones you still have nightmares about." The perception startled Liv. "How did you—" "You talk in your sleep sometimes," Ellie explained gently. "At the bunker when you were having bad dreams, I could hear you apologizing to them." The revelation pierced Liv's carefully maintained defenses. The children in that Afghan school, collateral damage in a mission gone horribly wrong, had haunted her for years. Their faces visited her in dreams, their voices asking why she hadn't saved them. "I followed orders," Liv said, the words feeling hollow even as she spoke them. "Winters ordered us to hold fire until target confirmation. By the time that came, it was too late. The explosives were already in place. And now you have a chance to make it right," Ellie concluded. "Not just for me or Agent Vega, but for them too." The simple truth of it hung in the desert air between them. Not revenge precisely, but a reckoning, a chance to ensure that Winters couldn't cause more collateral damage in pursuit of his objectives. "I'm not a killer, Ellie," Liv said finally. "Not anymore. Whatever happens with Winters, it won't be execution. It will be justice." Ellie studied her aunt's face in the moonlight, seeming to find reassurance in what she saw there. "I believe you. Just come back okay. You're the only real family I have left." The words struck deeper than any tactical discussion or strategic planning. Through all the chaos and danger, this was the core truth Liv and Ellie had found in each other, the family they both needed. Whatever came next, that bond would remain their anchor. "I'll come back," Liv promised, drawing her niece into a fierce hug. "That's one mission parameter that's non-negotiable." As they stood together under the vast Arizona sky, Lieutenant Olivia Hargrove made a silent vow, not to the Navy, not to abstract concepts of justice, but to the girl beside her. She would end Winter's threat, not through the cold efficiency of a sniper's bullet, but through the more complex, more difficult path of true justice. One way or another, Victor Winters would face a reckoning for his choices, both past and present. And when it was done, Liv would return to build the future Ellie deserved, one free from fear, from pursuit, from the shadows of operations gone wrong. For the first time in years, Liv felt whole, the warrior and the woman, the protector and the family member, integrated rather than at war. Whatever came next, she would face it with that wholeness, that clarity of purpose. The final confrontation with Winters awaited. But tonight, under the desert stars, Olivia Hargrove had already won the most important battle, the one for her own soul. In the end, it wasn't about the perfect shot. It was about finding the courage to put the rifle down. Winters' compound fell not to violence, but to evidence, the records Ellie uncovered of offshore accounts. The testimony of a Scarlet Viper turned informant, the shocking discovery of Agent Vega injured but alive in an underground detention cell beneath the facility. When the FBI strike team moved in, a new team vetted personally by Morgan's most trusted contacts, Liv was not among them. She waited on a ridge 5 miles away, rifle assembled, but never fired, watching through her scope as Winters was led away in handcuffs. In her earpiece, Ellie's voice provided a constant stream of updates. Technical support transformed into breathless play-by-play as justice unfolded below. In the command vehicle beside her, Morgan monitored communications, ensuring their carefully orchestrated plan remained on track. As the helicopter lifted off, carrying Winters to federal custody, Liv disassembled her rifle with practiced precision. Each component returned to its case, each movement deliberate and final. The weight she had carried for years, the guilt, the rage, the need for vengeance, set aside with the weapon that had defined so much of her life. "It's over," Morgan confirmed, ending a call on his satellite phone. "Winters is in custody, multiple federal charges, no possibility of bail. The evidence is overwhelming." Liv nodded, feeling not triumph, but a quiet certainty that she had fulfilled her promise to Ellie, to herself, to those children in Kandahar who had haunted her dreams for so long. 3 weeks later, she stood outside the Veterans Reintegration Center, Ellie beside her, both of them staring at the entrance with similar expressions of nervous anticipation. "You sure about this?" Ellie asked, glancing sideways at her aunt. "You could still go back to driving." Liv considered the question. The open road had been her refuge for years, a place to hide from herself as much as from the world. But hiding had nearly cost her everything that mattered. "I'm sure," she said, straightening her shoulders. "Besides, someone has to keep an eye on you until your mom gets out of rehab. And after that," the question carried all the weight of Ellie's past disappointments or her fear of being abandoned again. Liv put her arm around her niece's shoulders, solid and present. "After that, we figure it out together. That's what family does." The job interview was brief, the center director clearly more impressed by Liv's quiet competence than by her military decorations. When she explained her desire to work with veterans struggling with PTSD, her own experiences offered without shame or reservation, he simply nodded and extended his hand. "When can you start, Ms. Hargrove?" "Immediately," she replied, accepting his handshake with a firm grip. "And it's Lieutenant Hargrove, actually. I think I've earned the right to use it again." Later that afternoon, they visited the truck stop where it had all begun. Desert Mirage looked smaller, somehow less significant than in Liv's memory. Sophia was there, her smile brightening when she recognized them. "Miss Liv, we heard about that trafficking ring being busted. Was that what those awful bikers were involved in?" "Something like that," Liv acknowledged, accepting the coffee Sophia poured without being asked. "Seems like a lifetime ago now." "And who is this?" Sophia asked, turning her warm smile toward Ellie. "My niece, Liv," said, the words coming easily now, wrapped in pride rather than awkwardness. "She's staying with me while her mom gets some help." "I'm helping Aunt Liv with her new job," Ellie added. "She's teaching veterans how to shoot. She was the best sniper in the Navy." Sophia's eyebrows rose, a new understanding dawning as she looked at Liv. "I always knew there was more to you than truck driving." "There's more to most people than what you see," Liv replied, sipping her coffee and watching the desert sunlight stream through the diner windows. "Sometimes it just takes the right circumstances to bring it out." The dust settles now across the Arizona desert, covering blood and brass alike. 6 days of violence spanning 7 years of ghosts. The highway stretches empty, where it all began, as if nothing ever happened here at all. But wounds and wisdom remain. They called her Big Liv, mocked her size, her slowness, her quiet ways behind the wheel. They never saw the warrior beneath the weight, the precision behind the pain. They never understood that some people carry their battlefields inside them, long after the war is done. A woman stands now at a crossroads, not of highways, but of healing. Her niece's hand in hers, her past behind her, not forgotten, but finally faced. The truck still waits, its engine humming with promise of open roads. But something's different in how she carries herself, in how she breathes the desert air. Sometimes the strongest people are those who learn to set down their weapons. Sometimes the truest aim comes from knowing when not to pull the trigger. And sometimes, just sometimes, the weight we carry becomes the strength that saves us all. What battlefields do you carry inside you, waiting to be faced?